It's Melissa's parent.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending our training in St. George and getting things moving forward. So I'm here with Ree, and I'll have her introduce herself, and she's going to be helping lead us in our presentation for today. So I'll get up her presentation. We'll get moving forward.
Yeah, so I'm Bree, and I do speech pathology and the UATT team leader for NEBO, and I'm on the leadership team. So I got asked to help facilitate this training today. I was promised that I'm just a discussion leader though, so I have some questions, and we're hoping for some great input from everybody else, so you don't have to listen to me too much. Anything else that you want to throw out there?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That sounds like a plan to me. So I'll just get it up. So we're reviewing it in the slideshow, and we'll get things moving forward.
Fantastic. Starting with reading and writing AT. So, yeah, series of questions to just see what everybody's doing with this. So, starting with AT support for paper-based books, what devices are people using to support students when they're reading paper-based books? Paper-based textbooks, what type of things are you guys familiar with, or do you have questions about that? Yeah, like the C-Pen.
Biggest one.
Yeah, awesome. C-Pen, anything else anybody has?
Sure, there's an app for that, right?
Lots of that.
Lots of that.
Lots of that.
Lots of that.
Yeah, I'm wondering who is using which apps these days. I've been out of this a little bit. The apps I used to recommend, they might be older. I don't know. There might be something better. Trying to find mine. I forgot.
Well, and you think too, sometimes we have kids, when we go out to recommend the C-Pen reader, they just are like, I'm not going to use that. But
Yeah.
if they have a phone and we can put an app on their phone, that actually might be better. So I think we should look into some different apps. Yeah.
Apple has added actually on their camera.
Okay.
So with iPad, you can just take a picture of it, and a little scribble will pop up in the corner. Tap that, and in Siri's voice, it'll read, and it's pretty natural speaking. It's a bit better than the C-Pen reader.
So we'll work on an iPhone too?
Yeah, you just take a picture of the page, and then as long as that thing pops up, if they can't read the page, it won't pop up, and it's on the latest iOS.
Latest iOS.
So
That's something you have to turn on
Yeah.
in accessibility settings.
I don't know. I just had someone have a question about it a few weeks ago, and I Googled it, and that's what I found on YouTube. And it looks pretty straightforward. I mean,
I know I can take a picture of something and just highlight it and have it read back, but not immediately. Well, I can do the two fingers.
yeah.
Travis online brought up Seeing AI, which is one of our favorites here. Seeing AI. It originally was developed for individuals who are blind or visually impaired. It also can do settings. It can do money, barcodes. You can either just hover it over text and we'll read it, or you can take a picture and then read it that way. Really powerful one, only available in the iOS system.
No, it's
did
on,
it change it now?
It's
Okay,
on Android
excellent.
too. I just put it on a kid's Android phone.
Nice.
Free app.
That was a big
Super
bane of
cool.
our existence because that's why we hate Android.
Yeah.
I mean, no.
My favorite,
you
this
say
is
the same.
Travis. One of my favorite features on it is that you can take a picture and it'll basically interpret what's the picture of. And I actually took it one morning of my kids just sitting on their butts. They hadn't gotten up doing much. And I took a picture of it, and I had it interpret what the picture was doing. They basically said there are three girls in this picture frame that just seem to be doing nothing. It was awesome.
How appropriate. One of my favorites also is that it can read emotions as well. So it can say if someone's looking happy or sad, and it also gives usually an age guess. So that can be great or horrible for some people.
I
Depending
mean,
if
that's
you're
going to put us out of
sensitive
a
to
job.
So cool, interesting things with Seeing AI. The just short text reader works whether you have service or not. So you don't have to have Wi-Fi or service, and it can read through that. There are some features that if you have service or Wi-Fi are really cool. I like the documents one. So if you had a paper on a wall, like I had a kid, I went to work with him. Instructions are on the wall for the gas station job he needs to do. You can scan that and it makes a copy onto the iPad so that you can listen to them step by step instead of just having it read, all the steps over and over and over again. So that is a cool part of seeing AI too. They're just showing I got some hands something to say. Cool. CPIN readers, seeing AI, Apple. We need to look into if that's an accessibility feature or something.
Well, and there are lots of OCR readers built into the phones that you can just take the picture and then click the text, picture, that it will do that as well. So that's been around for a hot minute, especially combined with speech or text to speech can be really powerful, right? Especially when that difficulties. So.
Anybody, next one, any specific items for students with dyslexia? That the colored layovers are very popular for that.
Ooh, we're gonna get into controversy. People love those and then people don't believe in them as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And some of the apps have those built in.
Yeah. Anything else for people with dyslexia?
What about people with visual impairments? Seeing AI, again, we talked about how that's good with that.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about the
paper
dyslexia.
based. Yeah.
Has anyone used any of the different fonts that they talk about being dyslexia friendly or not? Has anyone had any success with those?
I've had people report that it was successful. I don't have dyslexia, so I don't know how successful it is, but I've recommended to a lot of people just the Chrome add-on, and it just makes everything on Chrome have that weighted font.
Yeah.
They said that they've locked out, had sped teachers use it for everything she does.
Well, and then just more simplistic fonts, right? I mean, there's Old English would probably be the last one you would want to use. Just to get it. Yeah. Anyone else would have anything for people with dyslexia, or maybe that they've used has worked really well? And I think really main thing on this would be is works great. If it doesn't, great. But just finding out what works for that individual, because as always, people are individuals, and some things are going to work and some things aren't going to work for them.
Yeah, and to keep in mind too, this one's paper-based, and so it might be that we need to make that more or less, it might be that we have to move away from paper-based. That might be the barrier if we need a specific font or something.
Yeah. And then again, Travis, you said read and write. Tell me about some successes maybe you've had with read and write, working with people with dyslexia, if that's been a big help for them.
Yeah, I know that the big focus probably is on the paperback things right now, but with read and write, you can go through and you can scan. With their desktop version, you can have an optical character recognition piece in there, so you can go through and scan the document, and then to a digital format.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I think anything that you could digitize text is going to be really useful, because then obviously you can use technologies such as that text to speech.
Yeah. Anybody have any good suggestions on quickly digitizing text? Like if you have a kid who has a textbook that's paper-based, has anybody had to scan that all in really quick?
So I know on Apple Notes, you can make it a PDF. You use the camera on it and then it'll digitize it out.
Cool. On the Apple, just on the notes, it's built into it. Sweet.
Mhm. That's pretty quick. I mean,
Okay.
Adobe, that's simple. That one's pretty simple.
Yeah. When the kid and Adobe again, you'd have to buy, so what would be quick and easy for them to access. That's cool.
How about, has anyone ever used with the internet browser where it just kind of simplifies, takes out the pictures, all the ads, all that kind of stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a fun
Did you have a comment?
Oh, that's it, snap and read.
Yeah, it's a function of
Quite
snap and read.
well, and the kids were totally amazed when I was able to show them, and they could see the words instead of having all the other ads and stuff on the pages.
Yeah. No, just moving those visual distractors can really help.
Yeah. So then again, with paper-based, it might be that we need to get it digitized. How are we normalizing reading support in the classroom to avoid stigma? Things like the reading, the CPIN, right? Like the CPIN, if that's the barrier, because they're like, I don't want to have to sit here with the CPIN, other than what we're moving towards is, hey, let's digitize. Is there anything else that anybody's done to help a student who's using a CPIN or something like that?
Isn't Washington using the CPIN very successfully? A couple of years ago,
Yeah, I say we have like 3 or 4 students that really like it.
Yeah. That's more than normal, I think.
Yeah.
Tough age and maturity level that should use them, I think.
Yeah.
Smart pen or the C pen.
And just remember, if you are in here, try to speak up so we can, people online can hear us as well, okay?
Okay, any other input on paper-based before we move to electronic? Okay, we'll go next then. So text to speech, separating out, our read and write and stamp and read. If we're just thinking specifically about the reading part of this, what programs are your teams using? We're using Stamp and Read at Nevo. I know a lot of people are using Read and Write. Anything?
The accessibility features in Chrome, because we use the Chromebooks throughout our district,
Cool.
and so just in accessibility as text to speech, really nice.
And I really like that because just as we were talking about normalizing this, right? If, I had a very good lesson when I first came down here, Kent and I were doing an evaluation and we went through the whole evaluation and got a really good suggestion for the person. And we said, what do you think about using this in school? He said, absolutely not. We're like, well, why? They said, well, everyone in my school uses a Chromebook and that's an Apple, an iPad. I'm not gonna do that look different. So the important thing about normalizing is giving people an option of something that looks, the same as everyone else. So if we can use accessibility features, whether that be through Chrome, whether that be through, the Windows 10 built-in features, or if it is an Apple district, using the accessibility features built into that, that's a really important part of that socialization, especially, not always, but especially as people get older, can be more and more important.
This is a program suggested to me by Robert Woodbury. He has lots of great information, but he told me about Morphic, which is an app that you put on. It can go on Microsoft or not on Chromebooks, but it can go on Apple Macs too. But so you add it to your computer, and then those accessibility features are just automatically on your screen. So you don't have to go find and turn on because they're always different on all different computers. And so if you put Morphic on, then there's this little pop-up. You can just open up the accessible feature right there.
Which kind of device were you putting that on?
So on it could be on a computer, but it doesn't. The only thing it doesn't work on is Chromebooks.
It's Chromebooks. Okay.
Yeah,
So on any laptop or computer based.
So it has to be able to download basically the software as opposed to, it doesn't
Yes.
operate,
Yeah.
cloud-based. Okay.
And probably not tablet based.
I don't.
Okay, no, that's
So
yeah.
you have to look that up.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Then Travis Online's talking about Chromebooks are working great. Is there specific features, Travis, that you like with the Chromebooks as far as the text to speech, or are you talking about just built-in accessibility?
Yeah, just the text to speech. We actually had some different. So I got a lot of feedback coming. The text to speech, teachers using Read and Write, and they've actually said that they've liked the features just in the Chromebooks for the text to speech better than what they were getting in the Read and Write. So it seems like the quality is improving.
That's good. And I mean, then you're not paying for a device plus a program, which helps with our budgets too, for sure. Pros and cons. So like you said, that's getting better. Are there any cons with what's built into the Chromebook? I think the big con for something like Stamp and Read and Write is the price per kid. And then when you're paying that much for the program and then it's not being used, that implementation is definitely a big problem too. Other pros and cons for what you're using. Have you noticed any cons with the built-in to the Chromebook, Travis, or you guys? No cons with that. And then as far as the data, then if we're moving into the next one, what kind of data are you taking data on those? Or are you just going out and teaching them how to turn it on and saying, hey, this is how you do it? You guys got it?
I'm asking that because Nevo's struggling with the data.
Yeah. The Snap and Read
really are.
The Snap and Read and Co-Writer data is awful. They don't give us good data at all. And so then, but then again, if you're just providing access is
It's
What data is
difficult on the
needed.
track, you
Yeah.
know, if you show someone how to do text to speech, you can't sit there and count how many times they use text to
Yeah.
speech or if it's
Yeah.
helpful to them.
Yeah, so how do we know if they do or don't have what they need, like if we need to change it?
You do like more qualitative and then have like a questionnaire at the end of the year and ask them like if they enjoyed it, scale 1 to 10, and you know, how much they would recommend it, you know, those kind of
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah,
I think asking students and the teachers.
Yeah.
yeah, asking. Yeah, I think definitely the teachers can let us know like if they were using it or not for sure. But yeah, I think you bring up a good point there of like asking the kid to, especially if we think about reading and writing tech and our kids who are using them, they're gonna have more often than not opinions at that age. And so, but then again, if they're not using something that was already built in, but they know how, then you know, hey, they have access. It's just a choice that they're being able to make. But then what, I guess the next question would be, how are we encouraging them to do that? Anybody have experience or thoughts on that? I bet.
I actually made it part of an assignment that they had to do it weekly. And I let them choose whatever they wanted to learn about. They could go online and look at it, but then I expected them to apply it and to use the snap and read and the co-writer to write me a little bit about it so that they were actually practicing those skills.
I was on that line. So something to note with, oh, sorry, Travis said, I've been using text to speech for both read and write and built-in feature in Chromebook. Then I let the teachers decide. So they're giving both and letting the teachers decide, or you could let the kids decide too. Hey, which one of these did you like? Did you like just having it built in? So Bobette, part of Bobette's classroom, and the reason why that worked is because everybody in the class had it. And so that is, I guess, another thought too, is if we're giving just an accessibility feature, could we go in, you know, say we have 3 kids in a class that need it, but it's not going to hurt anybody to have it. Could we go into a class and train everybody and have some of those, you know, gen ed, they don't really need it kids, but that are using it and make the kids more excited to use it together, make it, build it in, do some of that universal design type thing. Especially if it's built in your Chromebook district, and it's not going to be like, oh, we're having to spend all of this money on a bunch of students who don't need this. So that's great. Any other, so yeah, that was data. Again, a good question. Anybody else on data? Thoughts on what is needed, how you're getting it?
I guess our school district's asking for the data, or are you know, curious about the data for, is it being successful or not?
Yeah, I mean, at NEBO, that's what that has been our big question, is just, you know, we bought, the thing with Snap Rating co-writers, they were making us buy bundles of 150. And then after you get a bundle of 150, you have to either buy another bundle of 150 or buy a district-wide license. And so the funding becomes really, you know, and we had gone even to our curriculum department and presented and said, hey, this is great, universal design for everybody. And they were like, yeah, this is a fantastic program. So who's going to pay for it? Like, you know, that's the first thing that definitely came up. And so then what we've been doing is running out of licenses constantly, because every person wants the kid to have it, but then like, how are we supporting them? You know, even us going in, the UATT team, there's, you know, 6, 7 of us going in and training over and over and over again. Sometimes we're still not seeing that use. And so then it's come to, you know, well, we're going to watch, and if they're not using it over 3 months, then we're going to delete them. But what if they've written it into their IEP? So then, you know, how are we taking that back from them? It gets really complex. And so that's what, again, I don't know if that helps anybody, but what we've seen. And so it sounds like if you're doing something where it's built in and you're not paying for a separate program, that might be the way to go with that universal design.
When I would guess the real importance is if with your IEPs, how specific are you being with the program or just the technology? We talked about a text-to-speech technology, or renaming the technology? Yeah.
Unfortunately, I am, because I'm the one who's doing all the review of the data, and then have to go back and look at the IEPs. And many of the teachers actually named it. And so we're kind of stuck, and I've got this long list of kids who teachers said they need it, and I have no more licenses.
Yeah.
So
then training out that part of, hey, and I think that the thing that's there is looking at your programs that you do have, like Read and Write and like Stanford Read. And if you need word prediction, if that's the part that the kids needs, then yeah, you're going to want to write that out, right? Because that's built in. But if it's text to speech or speech to text, there's really not a reason to write the specific program because there are so many ways that we can provide that. So training out that idea of, how are we writing that into the IEP?
Well, it's hard too if you write it in there and the kid is like, I'm not using that.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, yes, you are, because it's your IEP.
Right. And so then therein lies the question of, do we write it into the IEP because all of a sudden we're doing an eval and, we're going to do this eval, let's write it into the IEP right now. Or are we doing a trial before we write it? Like, how are we deciding when it goes into the IEP?
Carrie and I were talking about this just the other day because we were talking about we have a ton of devices that our kids are using for augmentative communication. And when do we mark special factors on the IEP, or when do we make it an accommodation? And so it's a tricky question. Some kids use it just at school. They're not going to use it at home.
And we have, I think, in making it
Accessible.
but we have put the iPads in the classroom with the speech generating software, and not just for kids who are nonverbal, or kids like, or the teachers, for all the kids. We build it into their circle time. We build it into, so it's not odd,
Yeah.
So some kids have their own, but it's available.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have this, okay, well, if it's available and we can use it for them to show us what they know on an assessment, can we adapt it for that? Or when do we put that in the IEP? So we were really talking that if in the present level, you say, you know what, he has access to a classroom device that everybody has access to, and it really helps in instruction and assessment. And then when we decide they need their own, that's when we would put it into special factors.
Interesting. No, it is. I think this is something that everybody is doing, a lot of different things. And there's going to be different opinions on that. So one thing that I've been doing in NABO is a training with all of our special class teachers using that assistive technology consideration support document that's on the USBE website that UATT made. And whenever this comes up, I have been, kind of putting it back at them of like, we want to make sure, I don't want to put that every kid needs a calculator in their IEP because everybody benefits from it. But I want to be really mindful of like, if that kid is needing that to make progress, right? If we're seeing that their progress is contingent on any sort of tool, because if we look at that definition of assistive technology, of anything that they need to make progress, any item. I did have somebody ask about like, well, what about a human reader? I'm like, no, that item, person's not an item. But if they have an item that they need to make progress, then I think that that's something we can say, yeah, we are addressing their assistive technology. Then how that's written in, then deciding where we put that in goes from there. But that would count as assistive technology.
Yeah. And I think for you at Central, this is obviously real easy for me to say because I operate from a utopian aspect of, yes, we would like technology to be available for absolutely every student, every classroom. And, but there are limitations due to either money, time, effort, training, or even buy-in from a school district, right? Sometimes school districts are less supportive of that. We would love to see every item go home every night and come back fully charged, right? Because that would happen if we sent every item home and it would come back every single time and not broken. We would love to see everything go over the summer and then come back. But again, these are the ideals that we have, and we would encourage people to obviously to move towards that, but obviously districts drive things differently sometimes. So
Yeah, and that being said, I also, as I'm putting that question to the teacher, I tell them, okay, say this kid comes back tomorrow and they're moving. Is the IEP in order that you would be like, okay, this is great. They're gonna have what they need. They're gonna be okay. Or are you gonna be like, oh my gosh, this kid is, they're gonna move on and they're not gonna know. And I need to reach out to them and tell them like, oh, you need to do this and this and this. I would want to just be prepared that those things are written in there so that if something happened and they were moving, and you know, they weren't gonna be with me, that kid would still be able to have what they need to not have such a hard transition.
we're a little bit more morbid at the same. We say if you were to die tomorrow, would they know what they needed? So take it whichever way you want.
If they die tomorrow, do they?
No.
they need
Yeah.
If I died tomorrow,
They
and
might
that
not
knowledge
be.
died with me,
Whoa, a little dark. We went a little dark. Come back to seven.
threw off the groove. On that note, any other questions or thoughts about writing these things into the IEP?
Yeah, you can tell me this is totally wrong, but sometimes we have a hard time having teachers be held accountable for like using the device across all settings instead of just in magical speech time.
Mhm.
And so we have written that more specifically in the accommodations. And it's more like the staff is using that model or whatever. Mine are a lot of kids with COLO. But that has been very helpful because we see it then happening across the day because it is written in the IEP.
Yeah.
And we know that if they go to another school, like the secondary school or whatever, that it's written that way. And we're
Yeah.
seeing that happening, that
Yeah.
maybe it hasn't happened in the past. So
That's fantastic. The IEP is the power, right? That's the reason any of us are here. That's the reason we even have UATT teams, right? It's the IEP and you can use it in that way to make sure that kids, and we should be, right? That's the best thing we can do for them. And that's really the only thing we can do as they're leaving us to make sure, you know, hey, I've done all of this work to get you here. So by having that written in that way, hopefully that continues. The implementation question is going to come up. That's the last one on this slide. It's going to come up in all of these different areas. So any specific thoughts on implementation of text to speech?
I think for me, it's just giving opportunity, right? Because if there's not that opportunity to use it in a practical way, and also giving meaning to that. If it's not a way that people are going to actually find valuable, like, hey, you can do this to complete your homework. Great. Well, you can also do this to learn about things that you care about. Then people are going to care. They're going to take on that technology. So giving real practical ways to use that technology, not just an arbitrary, this will help you with your schoolwork.
Yeah, that's one thing that, oh, Robert, go ahead.
Robert online.
Can you hear me? Long-time listener, first-time caller. I like to use the example, just like Austin said. A lot of our kids just really hate reading, and their identity as a reader is they loathe it. And I like to tell people, you know, if I had this great app that would let you get a root canal every single day, how often would you use the app? And so that goes with implementing any kind of AT. If you can't find the motivation, the fun, the playfulness in there somewhere, it's just going to be like going to the dentist every day.
Yeah, I think that's great. Some of the things that we had done in NEVA with this, first of all, when we started training the text to speech, I told them, I want you to think about something that you want to know something about. It's school appropriate, but anything, you know, so we let them first choose, and that shows them like, oh, I can learn about something that I actually want to learn about. And then also at the end, after we've taught them how to use the tools, telling them, okay, get on and, you know, just do anything. But then also that same idea of talking about those different things that they can do, you know, we'll ask them like, so what other kinds of things can you do? Not here, if I let you take this home and you get to use it at home, like, what would you want to do? Or I've had other teachers who are like letting kids pick, you know, specific books. Maybe they can't read the chapter books that their friends are reading, but we can get online versions of them and say, oh, now you can, you know, do this so that you can talk with your friends. You pick which books you want. Let's look through this. Just anything that we can do like that to make it, like you said, more fun.
And thanks, Robert, for agreeing with me. Your payment's in the mail.
What? I'm checked. Love it.
When I'm with the kids, I use the comparison at feet to car. I can walk to get to some place, but it's a lot faster if I use my car. I'm giving them a car for reading, that they can use a tool to get them someplace a lot faster so that they can do the fun things they want to do. And that's the example I tend to use to help engage them.
Also talk about, especially with my older kids, like everyone loves audiobooks, right? Like, you know, this is just like an audiobook. I'll tell them either we're turning your computer into just like an audiobook, or hey, we're making your computer work like your phone. So now you're just able to use your phone, your computer as your phone, listen to things that we all love that, you know, and just try to make it seem more, again, universal, because the more we can make them feel not different, the better the success seems to be. Any other thoughts on text to speech before we head on? Let's do
I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you've had to go through and actually find a textbook out there for like a general ed student, and to be able to access the digital version of that textbook.
We had talked a little bit previously about using like Apple Notes, PDF, making it digitized. I haven't specifically, I know that a lot of textbook companies are making digital versions. Babette, you have thoughts?
I've had kids who were blind, and the School of the Deaf and Blind, we always gathered up the books the year before, and they would digitize them for us. But I literally have at times had to go to my copier in the school and digitize it, and I just, page by page, I'll go through and take the picture of it and put it into a PDF so that I can share it with that student. And I've done complete books doing that.
Online, yeah, we have a comment that Bookshare has had some of the textbooks that they have been looking for. So Bookshare is a good option.
And so like some publishers make electronic versions. And so that might be going and telling the principal, hey, they're going to need it electronic. You know, that might be an accommodation in some kids' IEP where, you know, if we have that visual impaired student where it's written in that the books are going to be electronic, so that we just know we're going to have to, that's going to have to be provided.
Well, not necessarily for school use, but the library program, I think Libby is one of them. They do a good job with that. Have, you know, Sora is another one I know that people use.
Yeah, definitely. Did that answer that?
What about like the National Instructional Material NIMAC, whatever it is, or the USAMAC? I've heard of those centers being able to get digital textbooks from them. Have you guys ever done that before?
No.
The one
I
that
have not.
I've not heard
takes
of
a
that.
long time, but I'm trying to do it.
What takes a long time?
Getting the textbooks.
Oh.
It takes a long time.
So you've tried it. It just is a long process.
It's a long process.
Becky says Bookshare is tied into to that.
Yes, and that's what I use. But
TVIs, what are TVIs?
I tried it one time.
What are Robert? I've requested specific textbooks through Bookshare, and they always use the NIMAC version if they can. Do you know what TVIs are?
Eric, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
That's your teachers of the visually impaired. So any Braille books, that's where they're getting all of those books from, is from USIMAC, NIMAC. But again, almost all of those textbooks on a print version are going to be available in Bookshare, like Robert said.
So Bookshare, you need electronic versions of books. That sounds like the first place you should check.
They also have all of the fun books, and that's why you want to go there first.
yeah, maybe that's where you can get some of those chapter books and the books that the kids will want to read too. So goes back into the, hey, we'll give them their textbooks, but we'll also give them some fun books too, so that they can practice with things that they want to read as well. All right, Travis, anything else?
No, thank you guys for your input. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so next slide is additional computer-based reading features. So that was the text-to-speech specifically, but other things like word prediction, translation, any things that other teams are using. Again, Read and Write for Google has that. Snap and Read has that. Any of you?
Just where we use Chromebooks, so much is already out there.
Do they do?
With the Translate, you can access Translate.
Okay. So Chromebooks do Translate. What about? What about word prediction? Is there something specifically built into Chromebooks other than, I know like Google is going to do some of those things, right? Some browsers are going to word predict, but anybody else have any free software running word prediction or dictionaries?
Like for your Chromebook, like, because like we used to have Read and Write, that was a nice thing to have, but now we don't. And so now
it is expensive. Yeah,
I don't know what to do.
absolutely. No, I think that is a good question. That's a question I would have too, because again, Read and Write's expensive. Snap and Read's a little bit cheaper, but still expensive when you're getting into the 500 kid range. Any good free versions? Nope.
Somebody better make
No free word prediction for anybody. Yeah, I mean, so I guess thinking about that, maybe you have a few licenses for those type of programs and try those things with the kids. And when you have, again, a specific need of this kid needs word prediction, that might be a reason to give them the full license to Snap and Read versus, hey, this kid just needs text to speech. Let's just give them their Chromebook. Same thing with.
So Snap and Read, is that less expensive?
It's less expensive than Read and Write. It's a little bit more janky than Read and Write too, especially in the data end.
Does
Right.
the word prediction work pretty
The
well?
word prediction, it works great. The biggest thing is the reading and writing program are separate with Don Johnson, so you have to pay for both. It's not like Read and Write where everything's all together. But the word prediction works great. The dictionary works great. It has the feature where you can literally click on any word on the screen and it defines it. I mean, that's really, those are cool things that some kids really need. You know, and so when I'm training out that concept, I'll tell them, hey, this is going to let you be more independent. So as you're reading along, you're not having to go, teacher, what does this word mean?
Right.
You know, you can just click on it. You can simplify the text. You can level the text to an easier level. So those, you know, while we're seeing Chromebooks and devices in general build in more of these features, there are still, it seems, some reasons that you might want to have a set of licenses for a program. So that you can run some of those other features that we don't seem to have free versions of. Any other thoughts on?
Robert online just saying that the online screen keyboards often have word prediction built in. So using that, you know, in either Apple products or you know, the Chromebooks or the PC products.
Okay. Any, Robert or Eric, any other good suggestions for like dictionaries or some of the other features that we see in Read and Write or Snap and Read?
A lot of apps, and like even Canvas has tools like Microsoft's Immersive Reader built in. Your district probably just has to turn it on, but that will have read aloud. It'll have a dictionary. It'll have picture supports. It'll have a whole bunch of different things. So like in Canvas, you could have all of that information read aloud, plus those other supports, plus like translation and other language things. I'm sure you can find a list online of all the place immersive readers available, but it's also available for anybody running Windows machines.
Okay. So in Microsoft, is it just called the Immersive Reader? Is it just an accessibility feature you turn on?
Yeah, so Immersive Reader's already turned on in almost everything Microsoft, but it's also available for free in a bunch of other apps.
Is it working on a Chromebooks?
Will it work in Chromebooks is the question?
No.
Okay.
It'll work in, like, if you're using Canvas on a Chromebook, it'll work. So, but not
So
like
it's-
in just the basic Chromebook stuff.
Okay, so there's an Immersive Reader built into Canvas.
Yes.
Okay. So it'll depend on what you're running. Like we are a Chromebook district, but we also use Canvas in some schools, so that might be an option. Robert says rewordify.com has free text leveling. It's decent, but not amazing. What about compared to the leveling that Snap and Read does? Is it similar or not quite as good?
I think it's about the same.
About the same.
They probably use the same AI tools to do it.
Cool. Rewordify.com. So again, if it's about the same as the one that we're paying for, you know. So again, the conversation here, I think, is, you know, thinking about what specific tools the kids need. Yeah, you know, because some of these things have every single tool, but do we need to be giving them every single tool? I mean, maybe we want to try every single tool, but what are we doing to determine, like, hey, what tools are actually working for them? What tools do they actually need? Just being mindful of that. Any thoughts on that?
Euler.
Anybody? I guess my only thought would be knowing the first thing to do that, right, would be knowing what is even available, and then knowing, you know, that may be changing up our referral process for reading and writing kits of like, hey, you know, let us know some more about the things that they aren't able to do that they need to do, so that we know, like, if they need word prediction versus just, you know, read aloud. So it might be a little bit of work on our part of helping get more information so that we can be more specific in the things that we're trying. Yeah. Anyway, other programs. The last question on here. So we talked about free features. Bookshare we brought up. Sora, Austin brought up. Any other cool programs that people are using that Eric said Canvas has that Immersive Reader? Any other programs that just have cool tools that anybody wants everybody to know about? Rewordify, like Robert said. And I guess another question that's not on this slide, it's on a different slide, but like if we do figure out cool programs or things, like how would we go about sharing that with everybody? My first thought is the Slack. Plug for the Slack, but you know,
one other e-reader, or I guess, is Speechify. You could, as long as you can add your, you have to have like a PDF of it. You can upload it. I think it'll allow you to take pictures of some, but not very many. But yeah,
okay.
Just one more.
Cool. E-reader Speechify. Cool. So yeah, my thought is, hey, if you find something cool, tell everybody in the Slack or send it to Austin so he can let us all know.
And then I'll tell you to send it.
And then he'll tell you to send it to the Slack. The Slack's great, guys. It's a great time.
We have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, so
Messaging app.
so we've sent out a couple times the messaging app that we're using. There is a UATT Slack group where people are going and sharing ideas. So if you haven't heard of it, this is your official reminder, and obviously a reminder that we need to send out another reminder about Slack.
You have to have it.
It's an app.
Just so you can just log in, and
You can also get on your computer too, so you can do the website or the app.
Yeah.
I like to,
Microsoft owns Slack, but Slack is its
but you
own
can do it on iOS too.
Yeah,
It's,
Slack is its own
yeah.
we also do on the UATT.org. There is a forum page on there. Right now, people are preferring Slack just because we've been pushing that for like about the last year and a half. But we are archiving some of the information on the UATT.org forum Obviously, it would be great if we, did use that as well, but we definitely can go Slack.
Yeah, the pros and cons to like what he was just saying is because our Slack doesn't last forever. It deletes, and so by moving stuff onto that forum, then we wouldn't lose it later on, so you could go back and actually see something that was a year ago and not just.
I think we had
a
stuff
month
from
ago.
2019 when we initially tried to run that and didn't have the best launch. So move
Yeah.
forward.
Yep, let's do it. Writing. Okay. Writing, typing access. So thinking again, not about the electronic first. Let's think about paper and pencil. I gotta have these questions out of order, but I want to go with the last one first. When do we move past the handwriting as a form of communication and bring in tools? So like, at what point are we deciding, hey, the writing by hand's not working, we need some tools? Any thoughts on that?
I'm finding like 4th, 5th, 6th grade is that is when I start thinking about it. But you know what I mean? 6th grade for sure, but yeah, 4th grade when they have to write more.
When
And they have you can't read anything they write.
yeah, basically when the need to write and the amount of writing is outweighing like, okay, let's learn to write, and it's like, okay, we need to be getting that information out. Okay.
Robert, online, what's your thoughts?
Maybe it's more of a philosophical injection, but I like to talk to teams about having like a toolbox approach to writing, where instead of it's either handwriting or keyboarding or speech to text, it's like, let's throw all of these tools in your toolbox. Because a hammer is going to work for certain jobs better than a wrench is. And so some things are going to be a lot easier to do. A worksheet's going to be a lot easier to do, maybe like with a pencil, even if your handwriting's not the best, than speech to text or whatever. So having that toolbox approach and then trying to get people to think about, okay, I've got these different tools. Now I need to match the tools to the tasks, which is just the PET framework, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic.
I think my simple answer to this is, when do you stop with handwriting? When the handwriting is holding back the learning experience, right? If they cannot demonstrate what they are learning due to they're just focusing on the mechanics of handwriting, and we maybe need to look at giving them an alternate tool to show and to participate and not fall behind in their education due to that manual handwriting. I know I've seen many people as travel around the state where either a teacher or a parent is just fixated on them. They just need to form their name, just at least their name. And some people, that's a great goal for, and some people are never going to get there. And if we just keep working year and year on, hey, they need to form their name, and then they graduate school and they can't form their name, how much have they missed out on? So that would be, I think the real key is just making sure that they still have the tools to be able to access. And we have to move someone quicker to, speech to text, because their abilities are outpacing their, maybe their physical abilities in that regard. Look at it as an option. I wouldn't limit it by, a year or a grade.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying, I would just say, I'm introducing.
No. I think you're saying
what I mean?
averages.
But
That's
never.
no.
No, is it the only answer? Your toolbox. I like that.
For sure. And I think that a thought with that too is like, okay, that doesn't mean we give up. We don't want it to seem like, hey, we're giving up on ever trying to write more. It just means, hey, is our writing IEP goal still going to be writing our name when we're in 6th grade? Or are we going to be working on getting some ideas out, and we can still work on writing your name in a different time? And, it's not that we're going to give up on you ever writing. It's just, hey, what progress can we be making in getting your ideas out, moving beyond this idea of, oh, you have to handwrite. And I think that idea of a toolbox is a great idea for every single area, including our speech-based AAC of, hey, it's not going to be one thing all the time. It's, hey, let's match this to this task, but let's match this to this time. We're going to have lots of different tools for all of these things. So yeah, that's great. And again, I'll tell parents who are, especially, parents, teachers, people are like, oh, but then we give them this, they'll never learn to write. That I think is an important concept of, hey, we're not, it's not that they'll never learn to write. It's they have things that they need to get out now, and writing is the barrier. So with all AT things, our goal is to get rid of the barrier to do what you need to do now, because you deserve to communicate now, you deserve to write now, you deserve to read now. It doesn't mean we're not working on getting better at those things, but it means, hey, you can do these things now, and we keep working on that.
So Becky Powell, to add on that online, just said add and match the tools to the kid. Sometimes one kid can be successful much sooner than another kiddo, which I think is really important. And Robert, you had another comment?
Yeah, I don't know how many people are like armchair psychologists like me, but the psychology between the way the brain processes a gain and a loss is really fascinating. There's been a lot of studies that show that the brain processes a potential loss as way more important and catastrophic than a potential gain. And when we're talking about maybe like losing handwriting, and switching to keyboarding or something, that can be really hard for parents and students because it's processed as a loss. Does that make sense? And so if we can just approach this as, yeah, we're not getting rid of this, we're just adding other options as well, then that can sometimes just kind of help with that weird quirk in our psychology of don't take it away from me, don't take it away from me, or my world's going to end.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Kind of focusing on that additive factor as opposed to deleting something.
Mm-hmm.
So that wording can be really important and powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think for us, sometimes as professionals, we know that, but we need to work them through that as well. Of like, hey, our goal is never to take it away, but let us explain to you why, because there is a counseling component of this as well, going into that psychology. So then thinking about alternative keyboards, alternative keyboard apps, alternative devices, what are some that people have found to be helpful and successful? Thoughts on that?
For those with physical impairments in their hands, typically I just try and transition them to like a swipe type keyboard or just a touch keyboard, because trying to teach someone that maybe only has access to one digit is not going to be successful for them with a QWERTY keyboard. And so if you can shrink that down and they're just swiping between, it's a lot more effective. And that's what all their peers are going to be doing as teenagers anyway on the phone.
Yeah. Swiping keyboards, great. Any specific ones or just the ones that are built in?
Built in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Built-in's great. We had, I forgot the name. Look up Bobette. Will you ask our friends to look up the name of the keyboard that we had that kind of groups the letters together?
I know what you're talking about. The one that,
The app. So we found an app that we had a kid with a trimmer. We still have her, and just being able to, it's kind of like a double click where you click and then it opens up a set of words and then you can click another time. It was really cheap, and so we'll look up the name of that app. That it's been pretty cool for a couple of, and there are some things built into iPads where it's like, accessibility feature of don't select what I touch until I hold it. There's some cool built-in things with that too. Yeah.
So I know at UATT Central, we assessed dozens of different one-handed keyboards, from like the $400 Maltrons that have like the different slopes to them. We've done the ring ones, the tap ones that you do with one hand. We've looked at the Leapfrog is another one. And the biggest assistance we've ever found is just using a smaller keyboard, because then people can just do it with one hand or one finger and limiting the distance. I actually really do like the option of the slide keyboard, especially as you're saying, where that's becoming more and more popular and more in vogue. I think that's going to be a great option for the new people. But the part I think where all the one-handed keyboards fall down is they're not in a QWERTY orientation or setup. And so people have already learned to type. They have to unlearn that language to learn the new language, and those people aren't willing to put in the time or effort to do it. So yeah, I mean, we often will suggest it's a little keyboard that's about that big, or there's ones that are a little bit bigger that people can just, and kids love it. Or individuals love them. So
Yeah, I think Robert, I think you did, yeah, I think it is called Super Keys. So yeah, Robert.
There's a keyboard in the GoTalk app,
Uh-huh.
and it's so on the iPad, it's smaller too, so you could do it one hand, but it also has prediction.
Oh, that's cool. And the Go Talk Now app?
Yeah.
Cool. Keyboard and yeah, a lot of the apps have keyboards built in, so that's great.
Or if you have a touch screen and onboard keyboard, they'll have the
Yeah.
prediction as well.
Yeah, we've done some touchscreen Chromebooks because sometimes just being able to have the screen helps the student. We've had some success with bigger keyboards as well for some of, we tried that with the girl with the trimmer, and she also likes that one where it's just a little bit more, it's less responsive. So for her, she can still kind of move around with it, and it's not just like, blah, blah, blah,
Is that
blah,
with or without a key guard?
it's without, but on we put it on the tablet mount. Mounted it on a tablet mount for a wheelchair, put it on her desk, and so she can still kind of hit into it, but then push hard on the key that she actually wants. And you've been over to that school.
Yeah,
How's that
and
going?
She used it quite often, so her desk is set up with that keyboard mount, and then her Chromebook is right behind it, and it's plugged into that. And so she'll sit there and be able to do that, and because she does have such a large tremor.
Yeah. So sometimes less responsive is actually helpful depending on our different physical.
I was assessing a student the other day, and it was really funny because he literally was holding his own hand
To try to make it stable.
to keep it stick. He was just used to over hand stuff, moving his own hand over to touch the keys so that he could use the GoTalk, or actually it was Pro he was typing out, trying to find a word. And it was just hilarious.
And there are quite a bit of just the accessibility features where you could make it so the key has to be depressed longer to actually respond. So that could be a good option. Or as again, when it activates when you lift it on a thing versus when you initiate it. Robert has a question. He says, I'm curious about experiences others have had with alphabetic ordered keyboards or students who struggle to navigate a QWERTY keyboard. So has anyone been using alphanumeric or keyboards where they've had maybe success or not success? Or any kind
Orion's the best.
What is it called?
That is one of them.
Has anyone else tried anything else, any other layouts? No, Robert, no help for you.
No, sorry.
On the other hand, I have used on the iPads at the bottom, they have the emojis. And often I would have the students use the emojis. Then, especially if we were talking about who, what, where, when, why, they could use those pictures and actually respond to my questions and things and using that. And so it was just that they were using those instead of typing words or using their Proloco or whatever, because it was easier and it was on the same forms that their peers were using. And so they would just say, who was it? What's the pig? You know, and they could just find the pig.
I like that.
Simple keyboard, yeah.
It
Yeah,
was
that's
just a
really
simple
great.
keyboard.
Well, I know Kent's an old school wingding. Is that the one you use on symbol based text?
I've heard of a few things.
Yeah. So
Any other cool, I know that there are keyboards that you could just add that go right to your phone. Anybody have any other cool ones that they like that are app based?
I mean, I communicate in GIFs, but yeah, that's something completely separate.
GIFs, but is it separate? Because GIFs are fantastic. Could we be getting some good messages through GIFs by teaching our kids to use
He
GIFs?
did say it was Super Keys that we.
Okay, it is Super Keys, yeah. Super Keys, great app. Yeah.
What would be the most common use of super keys? What's like a diagnosis or
It
something?
was that student with the trimmer trying to move. The big one was working, but we were just thinking, hey, if we need to not have so much, could we make it more compact for her? So it was more of a secondary, like opening up into a bigger keyboard on the tablet.
She really likes to text with her friends and to be social, and because she's aging out, then we needed another socially appropriate way to do that.
It's also been really great what our vision specialist has one that's working with a student who's in our post-high. And that student loves to do emails and will email her mom. And so it's really good visually too, because it does get so big and all of the different, it's basically like 5 quadrants and all of them are a different color. So just helping with her being able to see to make her emails that she likes to make.
Thanks.
And it's been 7 years since I taught her, literally, and she still emails me. So
Well, now, I think maybe I'll make Kent talk on this one a little bit more. We've had some people who have just used like a phone and linked it with an Apple computer and being able to type on the phone and use that as a computer. And I know you know the student I'm talking about, so I'll let you talk a little bit more about that.
Keyboard for the computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's extreme limited range of motion. I believe it's an app on his iPhone that connected to his Macintosh, and he could just use the keyboard on his phone to send it to the Mac.
Well, that was another one we were doing in Twillo. Remember, we were going to work with that individual who was going to do that as well, and they were using it through their.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, there are some really cool. I mean, that's the one nice thing about iOS is how those systems can communicate in between each other. And again, he was able to hold his phone just like this, but that was all the mobility he had was in his thumbs. But that was enough for him to be able to type and do that. So some unique options of being able to try to create some win-wins for people.
Any other things that we've done to help with either typing access or access to writing by hand? I know that there are some that we've used, the Dove, where you can hold onto something bigger and have the pencil attached to it, so it's not, working on finger graphs so much as just big movements. If you don't know about the Dove, go get it at UATT Central.
Well, that's the other thing that I would suggest is if you go to like 3D printing options, like with Thingiverse, there are so many alternate grip options. Right now we have a whole bunch of Death Stars kind of printed out where the pencil can go through it. It can be kind of a circular grip. So there are lots of work that people have done through Thingiverse or other 3D printing options for alternate grips for pencils or pens.
And those are things that count on that AT consideration. If we get something like that and it's working for a kid, that's something we could say. They need their Death Star grip. It's called something.
Right. But even like with, having different pointers or, different stylus is another great option for people. And especially if we're using anything that can be formed around the hand or in a way that would.
Or anything using like the head pointers with like the laser pointer where they type that way.
Now we're getting deep.
Yeah. But it's great for some people.
Yeah.
Any other things? Typing, handwriting. There are cool things. Austin will tell you all about it if you go visit.
Again, it's not that I invent all this stuff. It's just that I get to see more, travel the state, and I get to plagiarize all your ideas. So thank you, everybody.
And he knows more about 3D printing. I think we're great on this one then, unless anybody has anything else. Let's move to the electronic speech to text. So what programs are your teams using and the pros and cons of those? So right off, we use Co-Writer. Pros, it does speech to text. Cons, the data is terrible. I think kids I've seen be more successful with like voice typing in Google. And that's one that's available to everyone, a more universal design. I've seen them like that. The thing that I think Co-Writer has on Google in that regard is a feature where you can go and click anywhere into a document and then have it play it back without having to go to a different reader. It will read it right back to them. So that's really helpful with editing. But again, there are some features of the Chromebook that could do that anyway. So other.
Do you know how Co-Writer does their pricing structure these days? It's been years since I looked at it.
You can
It's subscription based, right?
It's subscription based, and again, that But I don't know how much we pay for our 150 bundle.
Got a quote for a principal. He asked me to be the intermediary. 150 was 3,200.
Okay.
1,300.
And that includes, you mentioned the other.
Does it have snap and read and color writer for both?
Okay.
It was
So 1,600 for 150.
Hmm.
And again, if we're being really mindful of not just like, oh, we have a kid who needs help with writing, let's give everybody co-writer. If you have that just for your kids who need more word prediction or that editing type feature, maybe 150 is enough. You are the team that's using the built-in thing so awesome that I want to be more like. What did you guys think?
We're doing voice typing most of the
Through
time,
Google?
yeah,
Cool.
just through Google. It's not as effective. It sometimes guesses it wrong and we spend a long time like correcting when it hears wrong, but it's free and it's on every computer in the school district.
Yeah.
So
At Universal Design.
But I think you bring up a good point in that is not only is this part of that, but part of this is teaching, right? Teaching the process. Because you don't just say, okay, here's the tool, just write now, right?
Yeah.
Do the total teaching. I'm sure we'll go more into that.
Yeah, the actual, implementation, the training. I was waiting for Robert to raise his hand. Robert, talk about the app.
Oh, we use the same thing. Most of the time it's just voice typing that's built into Google Docs, but we also have co-writer available. But there's an interesting distinction between the way the two apps do the speech to text. I don't know if you've noticed. When you start typing or talking in voice typing, it'll start putting your words on the screen right away. And co-writer will wait until you say a complete phrase or sentence before it will start to spit your words on the screen. And I've noticed just that some kids, like, it's nice to have the co-writer option because they're the kind of kid that like says one word and then waits for it to go on the screen and says another word and waits. And the speech to text doesn't work that way, that you speak in complete sentences. It's going to be a lot more accurate. And so there are a couple kids where not seeing the words until they've said a full sentence, because I always tell them, talk like you're just talking to your friend. That's the way it's going to work the best. But some of them either need the way that co-writer does it, or they, on the other hand, it drives them crazy to not see any words until they finish a sentence and they have an anxiety attack halfway through. And so they need voice typing to see those words right away to know it's working.
That's cool. I hadn't paid enough attention to that. That's cool that you noticed that, though. That's a really good example of how we might be more mindful of one thing for one kid versus something for a different kid. I think Austin brought up a good point of, again, going into that implementation of, how are we making sure this works? How are we making sure the kids have what they need? How are you guys going about training out these things to your students? What does the reading and writing process look like for different people? Robert, your hand's still up. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, as soon as I shut up, I realized I had more to say. Sorry about that. The nice thing about voice typing in Google Docs is it's just built right in. You don't have to pay for it. But the bad thing about it is it only works if you're writing in a Google Doc. And that's the one thing we like about co-writer for certain kids too, is it will work in UATT Compose or in Gmail or in other things too. You know what I mean? So it's, some kids need access to more than just Google Docs for functional writing.
That's a really good point. And even with that concept of, I can write it in Docs and then copy it over, some kids don't have that. Sometimes that might be too much. Sometimes it's better to not have to do that. But do you want to talk more about how you're doing that training, how you're making that decision with your kids?
I want to hear how other people are doing the training.
Okay, great. Well, we'll start. So we had been going more of the, hey, let's have teachers reach out to us and let us know, like, hey, this kid needs some help with, their reading, with their writing, and then we'll go out. And the difference here, when we do an AAC evaluation, we're actually doing an evaluation, and with the reading and writing, we're giving access to a program, at least with the snap and reading co-writer. So if it's not, the handwriting, what we've just done is not worried so much about the permission to evaluate, but just go give them access and show them how it works. And that training has taken place either with one-on-one kiddo and it's just one kid, or we've done more like, hey, we have this special class and every kid could benefit. Can you come and do a lesson in the class and just show everybody how standard reading, co-writer work? So we've done various things with at least the training of the electronic versions of reading and writing. What about you guys here in Washington?
For me personally, if I add it, like if I'm transitioning from handwriting maybe to a speech to text goal, I'll have it as the OT goal and I'm the OT. So I'm spending a lot of my time training them, but that's just one example. You know, I know that's not going to be universal for all teachers or whatever, but when we are teaching them, I'm usually trying to teach them about like posture and sitting up straight and, you know, like speaking nice and loud so that he hears you. And then I'm also trying to overcome what Robert was talking about, not focusing in on every word as it pops up, try and say the whole sentence before you even look at what it says. Because of that, I've seen that exact same thing. They see it say one word wrong and they pause and they have to try and delete the whole thing and kind of messes it up. So, Robert's comment also made me curious about Chromebooks. I was thinking it had it, so I looked it up. I haven't used it myself, but under accessibility, there is a shortcut that you can turn on where I want you to turn on set up voice command. You can just do Alt-Shift-S, and you should be able to dictate in any text box on Chromebook, not just in Google Docs.
Cool. Really cool.
Just trying to help them. Yeah. It's Alt-Shift-S is going to be a
right. Right.
Alternative speak.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is we need to create a document of all of the cool Chromebook accessibility so that we can share out with everybody.
I'd be real careful what you want, because that means you could have created it.
I gotta go get a Chromebook.
Right.
You hook me up with a Chromebook and we'll get going on that. No, that sounds great though. Honestly, it sounds like Chromebooks are fantastic. So, I mean, we have to just play with about more. But how are you identifying the kids? Just focusing on the teacher. Yeah, I've been having the teachers kind of flip those. So,
great. I think too, once teachers know about a tool, they often will use it without even contacting us with their students.
If it's already built in, yeah. So
a lot
building the capacity of your teacher.
Yeah,
great.
Along those lines, I was thinking a lot of times teachers, they're creative, they're great. And so if you can teach the teachers how to use this and then challenge them to play with it and use it in their life, like the teachers themselves, so they learn the ins and the outs, so they understand better how the cool things it can do for their students and the tricks that need to be so they can use it for their students. Yeah. But I think it's really educating the teachers and getting them to like buy in to the tech and see how cool this is.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, and I think you use a real powerful word with that buy-in. I've seen that be the real thing that gets things to switch over, because it's a cool tool, but if we're just talking about it really, from a thousand miles above the actual problem, versus I've seen people do really good in-services with students actually doing trainings or teachings, and that is to be the most powerful, because if a student can show, hey, here's all the cool things that this can do, and this is how this is personally changing for me, people will buy into that vision, right? If they can see very practically how it's working. So I've seen, hearts really shifted by that, where maybe they weren't open to assistive technology as much to really opening up, because the student was able to demonstrate how this was really impacting their life.
I was just going to say, so I'm in an elementary school, so oftentimes when they get to fifth, they do pretty okay till they get to fifth grade and you have to write a multi-paragraph essay and major meltdown because of the handwriting. But it's so nice that our school psychologist is also at the middle school. And so she is seeing, look, they're already doing all these things. It's just built into what the kids are doing in school with the Chromebooks. And so if we can start, all of our fifth graders have Chromebooks. So if we can just start teaching that in fifth grade, it just naturally continues. And they use it because everybody's doing it. So it's not like they stand out and it's weird. So that's been easier to transition. We haven't really tried any new things. I think our biggest hang up is making sure if they need the accommodations than it is the, they have enough practice. So when they do state testing, that's the big hang up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So building in, what are thoughts on how we can increase, going into supporting implementation, like how can we increase the use of those things? First off, I think if you could get a teacher to buy into like, hey, let's make, like Bobette was saying, hey, an assignment where once a week we're doing this. I know in a lot of states, I'm from New Mexico, and they would have like practice with the state tests, like a couple months before. You would practice like once a week. Like, could we practice like, hey, this is going to be on the test. We have this practice time where we're going to do this assignment. And you have to use these different things because those things, you know, text to speech, those are things that are available to everyone on the test. So it benefits everybody. And that's the cool thing about universal design is that all of us benefit, but then the ones who need it really have it and can feel comfortable using it. I think it really starts, you have to get your staff on board for anything else. Yeah.
Carrie over here, she is in charge of our preschool SLP program, and she's done a great job. We've been pushing AAC devices in our preschool like crazy. We probably have 100 students on devices.
Fantastic.
And we're seeing huge gains, but it's only because she actually writes lesson plans and curriculum to incorporate that device into everything that they do. But we actually talked to some of our teachers about switching from Prelico to something else, and they all like have a cow because they're like,
Right, they're like,
yeah.
But with that buy-in, like with preschool, since they're starting, like Carrie's done a fantastic job at the preschool level. As they're moving into the elementary, it's that much easier. And so then the elementary are getting more on board as we go. But it's been better than before when we go like, look at this awesome program. They're like, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, no, to get that buy-in at the ground level is so important, right? It normalizes it for the entire lifetime.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to introduce that in high school.
Yeah.
it was hard to I think get the district and tech to say, I need 100 iPads in preschool. And I'm like, what?
That was a fun
I can see guys like, if these are used as like doorstops, I am like,
So we'll
Right?
when we get
I
them
will
back.
lose my
Right.
mind.
but I think what we've seen is that we've, gained more and more is that, we see the kids have this technology so that they don't need it when they go to
That's-
elementary.
Yeah. I
So
would
they've
say the
grown
same.
so much that we have lots more verbal kids because they've had a speech generating device. And so how many are going to kindergarten with a device?
next year, like
10?
8 to 10
8 to 10?
out of the 100
Yeah,
that we
out
have
of
used
all
right
of
now.
those, yeah.
That early intervention is real important.
It really is.
Yeah, but it's taken us probably 3 years to get teachers
That's
on board and starting to use it, and it's still hard every
And you
day.
still have those
Yeah.
holdout teachers
Oh, yeah.
that are never going to do it.
Yeah.
they have to retire.
Right. Yeah, they're just
I
not
didn't
doing
say
it.
that. I didn't say
Hey now, hey now.
We should probably share some of Carrie's lesson plans that she's put together. So I
That'd be
actually used one the other day. It was for, I can't remember what it was for, but she has it where there's a video in there, and she's done a lot of Tar Heel videos where the video actually stops and then the kid actually has to push something on their device so it will go again. And I was like, really?
We did that for like, I have a subscription to an email that I send out every week to parents about word of the week. And then what they get, and I think it's more helpful to parents than it is to teachers. But then it's also lessons that people taken and used individually.
I use it every week. What are you talking about?
I am so glad.
That makes it worth my time.
But they get, here's a poster you can put up in your school of the word of the week, and we put them all over the place. And we have the Prolico boards even on the playground fencing. and everywhere. And
And
so
the
it
staff
has
like some of the protocol words on their lanyard.
on their lanyards that they can use. And so the parents get every week, like, what did we work on the previous week at school? Then I introduce it to the parents. And it usually has a bunch of different videos that, like she says, we'll stop and say, oh, like, we have to find like. And then it will have books and activities or things like that. So it's kind of adding to parents. And what I've seen is that we have gotten about, let's see, $4,500 in donations for preschool AAC from parents. And yeah, people that have raised money for that. So I think the awareness is helping.
That's great. I think the point that you're hitting on that is really fantastic is that this is more than just us, even as our UAT team, like we have to get that buy-in. And I've been telling people this as I've been doing my capacity building training is like, hey, me having this information means nothing to any of your kids because I don't work with any of your kids and I don't know them. And so the best thing that we can be doing is getting this information to the people who do work with those kids. And so getting them on board, figuring out, you know, hey, can I go to this group of people, my preschool group or this school, and can I get them this information so that we see that implementation increase? Those are the things that I think that us as UAT teams should be looking into because there's just too many kids for us to do it by ourselves without getting more of our school community bought in and involved in it.
We've also, I think you had said this too, about we decided in preschool that if a child has a device specifically, that we will have speech goals and then we have teacher goals and they mirror each other, but the teacher has to keep data in their classroom on these communication goals. And it makes them accountable for keeping that data. And then it becomes an investment to them that they need the device in order to do what they need to do. And that was a hard sell, but we got support from Reg Ed even before.
Yeah, having that support. I think that's a good thought too, is, you know, how are we writing our IEP goals to incorporate these type of things into them so that we're making sure that they're being used, so that we're making sure that progress is there, because that's the entire reason that we're doing any of this is to see that progress, and it needs to be tied to the IEP. And so how are we going about, you know, having those conversations of, hey, this should be a part of your goal, and them not being like, get out of here, I write my goals. Like, you know, how are we collaborating on goals? How are we doing those type of things? I think that's great. Any other thoughts online about like supporting implementation, supporting capacity of our teams? Let's see if I can read that other question up there. Are we doing the same thing to teach people how to do speech to text that we would teach people how to write in general? Okay, so the idea being, is there a hierarchy that we're using to teach the speech to text, like a hierarchy that we use to teach writing? So, you know, we don't start by, when we were looking at IEP goals, we're starting by like, oh, they will write their first and last name, versus, you know, now they're going to get a sentence out, versus, hey, now we're going to get a paragraph out. Are we thinking about those type of things as we're teaching speech to text? Any thoughts on a hierarchy of language structure when using that?
Eric Ingar has a great conference video from 3 years ago on our YouTube page regarding that.
Cool.
Good.
Cool.
How to teach speech to text, right?
And Eric, he just posted some links on there. Do you want to tell us what those links are and about that?
So those are the links that I built the training on. So I don't remember who the authors of that paper are, but they did just a really good job of teaching just a 4-step process of using speech to text, because, you know, we spend hours and hours teaching kids to handwrite, hours and hours teaching them to type, and then we hand them speech to text most of the time. So the process is as simple as think it, say it, check it, fix it. So like Robert was saying earlier, you know, kids will watch for the text to come up on the page. So they're saying it and checking it at the same time, which is really hard to do. Like I can't do that. So if you think it first, compose it in your head, then say it to the computer without watching it, then going back and checking it and editing it. That 4-step process works really well to teach students how to use speech to text. And in that link that I shared out, there's different levels of here's how to get started, here's how to go to next steps for, you know, starting at shorter sentences and passages or using even closed passages. So they're just filling in the blank, right? And then they can move on and grow those skills.
That's great. Great ideas for making that functional and having structure and not just, hey, here it is, go do your best. I love that. Robert.
And I would always emphasize the importance of using pre-writing strategies to organize your thoughts before you turn on the mic and just try to spit out a 5-paragraph essay. Like that's not how our brains work, but somehow we expect kids to be able to just, you can talk to me for half an hour about Pokemon, so organize a 5-paragraph essay in your head on the fly.
That's great. Anything that you're specifically using a program for that like anybody have?
I think most teachers know like what works for them. Hopefully they do as far as pre-writing goes. So I'd rather they use what they already have so they have buy-in.
Cool.
It's called Chat GPT. Write a 5-page paper on Pokemon.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
You're probably going to talk about this later, but I don't.
Julia's giving us the mom head shake in the back. No, absolutely not.
But if you're going to use, if students are going to use AI, and so we have to mold ourselves to that and teach them how to be better editors, right?
Yeah.
And editing is a higher skill than just writing. And so like,
and I would argue also teaching them how to give ChatGPT the right inputs
Yes,
to get
yes.
that right. There's a skill in and of itself in that as well.
You do bring up a good point. We're maybe getting a little ahead because we do have AI
As
slated
part of
for
this,
later. But no, I mean, that really is important. Like you do create assignments that are going to incorporate AI. AI is here to stay. So how do we use it and use it for a positive, right? And make sure that that's just, you know, the assignment's not just write this paper and then they do AI. It's, hey, have AI write this part of the paper and then review this and then discuss with somebody like what you agree with, what you don't agree with.
Yeah.
So how do you implement AI and use it for positive means versus just doing the paper for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we'll talk more about AI at the end, but definitely. And then what are we doing to normalize, basically, is that last question. How are we making speech to text more thoughts? The first thing I'm telling kids is, hey, who doesn't text on their phone with their voice? Who doesn't love voice texting? You know, again, that idea of, hey, let's make your computer like your phone. Let's do that. We also, for a while, we were buying every kid a pair of headphones and giving them a cool pair of headphones. Like, hey, you can use this, and we'll give you these cool headphones if you use it. We got a good deal on them. But Babette?
I literally wrote out a grant this last year and all my kids got touch screen Chromebooks and I got headphones and mics to go with it in cases so that they wouldn't break them.
And I think that that is a good point for like even voice typing, regardless of which program we're using, sometimes having a microphone or something like that will just make it better. So what kind of things do we need? Not just the program, but you know, do we need headphones so that they can do it discreetly? Do we need a microphone because this kid is more quiet or doesn't articulate as great? Do we need to have in the IEP that they can have an alternate location to do their writing so that they feel more comfortable? Again, some are going to use that because they don't, you know, so thinking about our different kids and what they'll use. And yeah,
I would definitely think it's hard. I mean, some of them would use it, but and when the teacher says go and everyone's typing, it's going to be like, it's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard
talk
for
while
them.
everyone's being quiet.
Yeah.
it is. And in theory, telling them, hey, we put in your IEP that you can go to a different place. Like, that's great, but are they going to want to?
Yeah.
So then is it more like, hey, you can do your writing at home, do your best now, but, you know, do they need extra time? Do they, you know, any other thoughts on how we're working through that of like not making the kids feel so
I mean, I would say if you can get teacher buy-in structuring the classroom, so it is a more friendly, environment where people can write. There are some, as you're saying, good headphones that do good noise canceling features. There are some options, but yeah, maybe creating a good option for that.
Kimberly Crump.
Hi guys. My dream would be for elementary school teachers to work that into their assignments just on a regular basis. So if they're going to write a 3-in-1 essay, or if they're going to write something, they just make it so that everybody does this essay with speech to text. Everybody's just going to do it. And then pretty soon, by the time the kid gets to 6th grade or whatever, it's pretty normalized whether you do speech to text or typing or whatever, because the teachers have already worked it into specific assignments and they're teaching the kids along the way and making every kid do it, making every kid use it and try it out and figure it out, so that by the time they get to junior high, where I'm at, it's pretty cool to do whatever you want. It's not stigmatized.
Yeah. So thoughts on getting the teachers on board on that?
Doctors use speech to text
Yeah.
for all of their documentation. So like if you want your top, they've got to learn it eventually.
Yeah.
So
Have to normalize it for the teachers too, right? Hey, everybody else is doing it. Why are we not teaching kids to do speech to text?
yes.
Well, yeah. It doesn't mean that we're losing writing or we're losing typing, but why can't that be, hey, if we do 3 essays this year, why can't one of them be speech to text?
I'm sorry, I feel like it's a little bit on the subject, but has anybody looked at Project Relate by Google for
Robert,
non-standard speakers? And I don't know that Project Relate does much of speech to text. I feel like it should, especially like students with maybe some mild to severe apraxia, that just like speech to text is not going to work a lot of the time.
Exactly.
But maybe something a tool that might help. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Has anybody
Robert
used it or looked at it?
Robert, we are ready for your
Sorry.
for your Project Relate.
Didn't mean
discussion.
to-
Leave. Yeah,
Oh,
leave.
Right, this goes right into it. Yeah.
Yes.
We've had, I think, we've got 4 students trying out Project Relate now. By the way, if you're going to try that out, I got in trouble with my district because they said that it violated student privacy laws. So because Google collects the voice recordings to build the voice model. So we just had to have parents sign a form now that's saying they're okay to break the law when they use this app. And they've all been cool with it. But we found that we've had one student, it's quite a process to have to record at least 500 little cards so that it can build your voice model. And it's not an overnight thing. We had one kid that went through the process, and after about 600 cards, it finally was understanding him well. Another one recorded them all at home and it was noisy. And so the SOPs had to go back and re-record them all at school. But if you get past the pain in the neck of having to record all that, we're seeing some success with it, but it's not like an overnight, we're going to be able to use this tomorrow on your essay or anything like that. There's a process to have to record all that and have it build your voice model.
The hope would be that as that, like with all of these things, as it gets more and more popular, that it will get easier and easier. And so the hope would be that we would see that. But yeah.
Well, I know when I was at ATIA, acapella was specifically talking about dealing with, so lots of companies are aware that this is a problem, right? The speech to text is held back by limitations in, vocal abilities and that. So they are looking at finding ways that if people can just be consistent, still being able to determine words. And it is quite powerful. There isn't a real leader, I would say, that they're just knocking it out of the park yet, but it's going to be coming real soon. So
we're all hopeful.
Yeah. We're all saying the same prayers for this.
Yeah. Robert, there was a request for you to share your release that the parents are using, so that we can all model off of yours. And the
Yeah, I'll
weekly-
post it on Teachers Pay Teachers. No, I'm just kidding.
So yeah,
Man, Robert's making a lot of money.
My teachers won't let us use anything with teacher page instantly. That's the dark web.
Yeah,
dark
the
web.
dark web. Teacher dark web.
Wow.
They won't pay for it. You can, but.
Yeah, they will not.
And actually, they don't really approve you using it. So you have to, yeah.
Man. Any other thoughts before we head on? I think we're good.
All right, moving forward then.
Let's do it. Note taking. Anybody doing cool things for note taking?
Do we want to have any bad problems?
This comes up often when we're going out for referrals, and I'm just like,
That's not, I don't.
yeah, I don't know. If you guys have a good idea, we need to know it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the last things we were using was called MindNote. I haven't looked at it in a hot minute, but when we were last using it, it was cool. We could record 15 minutes for free. And the issue was with that free version, restarting your recording every 15 minutes. But the cool thing was as it was making a recording along with, you know, whatever you were typing, and you could go back and listen to it, kind of like the live scribe pen. Anybody familiar with that? So it's kind of like an online version of the live scribe pen. But again, there was that like subscription of getting the full version. But it worked.
But the full version was only $10.
Yeah. But again, it's been a couple years since we looked at it.
Yeah.
And the reason it's been a couple years since we looked at it is because
No one used
the kids didn't care.
Well, and I feel like too with note taking, you have to know what is important in the lecture to gain from it. And that's skill
That's
that
a
needs to be
skill.
taught before we can talk about taking notes in class.
Yeah.
Do kids
And
in
how
do you
general
even-
do it anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably the really
Yeah.
good students do.
I think it depends on the structure of the class. You know, I know in college, you know, so then we're looking at, hey, is this the skill that we need to go down to secondary school? Are they doing it in this class? But I think that also the live scribe and pros and cons of that, it looks like everybody else is taking notes. So if everybody's taking notes, it can be really great, but you have to sit at the front. You have to sit near the teacher so that it can hear you well. And getting that, you know, not feeling different, actually using it can sometimes be a barrier. Anybody, Rob or Eric, anybody else ideas on note taking?
I've had quite little success with the high school students and younger ever using the live script smart.
No.
2 out of 10, I would guess is my
Yeah.
average of people that use it well.
Yeah, we've given it out and haven't had great functional use either.
Maturity level, I don't know what that is. Just caring. I don't see the magic from it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point is these students, we have to allow them to have autonomy, and so we can give them these things and say, hey, this is amazing. But I mean, we want to teach them, and so we have to look at, is it that we're not teaching them enough, or that we have to let them make the choice not to use it? True. What did Robert say?
Twice.
What are they? Class twice, once in person, and then again. Oh yeah, 'cause they have to. It's
Exactly.
more work. They have to listen to it a second time.
I'm telling you, I'm not doing that.
I did that at college, but I'm not doing it anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
So how can we expect our
Because you're
kids
paying a lot of money.
Right?
do all of this
Recording it
work?
and then-
Yeah.
It's not a successful tool for note taking for our kids. It's a successful tool for building relationships with teachers and staff. Because teachers and are you saying because the teachers and staff like the tool being available to the students? How are you building the relationship with teacher and staff? She might be typing. Just what they ask and we respond and they feel heard.
I think kids are more successful, like if teachers do a lot that they have, if they can have a copy of the materials that teachers have, a lot of them now they pull up on electronically to
Mhm.
pull it up on their phone
Yeah.
or whatever on campus. So that has been easier, 5 years ago, that wasn't happening all the time. I feel like kids are a lot more successful if they can have a visual close to follow along during the discussion.
Yeah.
But that understanding of what they should even take notes of or stuff like that for a lot of the kids that we work with. And that's hard.
Processing,
Yes.
just listening and writing.
Yes.
What you
It's
just heard
too
while you're
much.
listening to the next thing is a cognitive task that is
That
pretty
may
hard.
be too much.
Too much
So
for
what this is sounding like is, hey, maybe we need to be helping when we get those requests from the teachers, help, make sure that they're heard, but saying, hey, what accommodations? This might be a difference between, hey, is there a tool for this? And is there hey, can we help you with, how can we accommodate this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Kimberly from Christian.
I work at a high school too, and there's been times when we've needed teachers to do like adapted notes or things like that. And in my school district, like the teachers are really, really, really stressed. And like, if you ask them to do like one more little thing, it's like, and I get it. I totally get it. So if there is a way that, you can present it, like, here's a way to do adapted notes or notes for this child to follow along, and get them, I don't know. It's such a great idea. UDL, you know what I mean? Like if you are catering and making it so that the least of these are successful, it's going to be so much better, because there's so many kids that aren't on IEPs that don't know how to read either, or that could use visuals or could use things to fill in as they go along. It's not just kids with IEPs, and like that's just going to boost the whole school, but it's not being taught. I don't think it's not a skill that the teachers are really being taught in school as they go through the universities or anything like that. I wish the universities did more UDL things. But anyways, it's just trying to get teacher buy-in and trying to like give them examples, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, here's one way of doing notes for this lecture on Greek mythology, or you know what I mean? So
Another idea, maybe utilizing the other students. You have a student who you trust is going to take the notes well, take a copy of their notes and give to, mark out the name, give that to everybody. Bobette, did you have a thought?
Couple things. Yes, when we were up at UATT, there was a Chrome extension. It was called Remote, and it allows the teacher then to put their voice and a recording literally on their slides. So for each slide, you could put the things, and you can have that on your presentation or whatever, so that the kids, these are the important things. But when I had students going out to classes where teachers had notes, we asked the teacher just to print up their thing, and then we gave them highlighters and we taught them literally just to mark the important words or the important things. That's even though, because they couldn't listen and write at the same time, but they could highlight what was the most important thing. And so then they had the notes that way.
Yeah, giving the notes. I like that idea that you just said about with UATT and the MOTE. Was it MOTE?
MOTE.
Cool.
And I looked it up last night, and there is a small cost for the teacher. If you pay, I think it was $20 for the year, you could do up to 15 minutes per slide.
Cool.
And you can literally, you can either do a video, or you can just do your voice.
That's cool.
And so you're right on presentation itself.
That's cool. Yeah. So the app was called MOTE, MOTE for online. The question there. I think that's an interesting concept of, hey, how can we be changing how we're teaching? You said that was one thing the keynote speaker talked about with AI is, how do we need to change our teaching style? If the note taking is not working, what do we need to do? Do we need to be just putting the lecture into the slide so that everybody has that? Like, what can we be doing to make this more universal, to make it more accessible to everybody?
They were doing it to literally read instructions on an assignment so that the students could go back and check and make sure that they had
understanding of that. Yeah.
The understanding of the work.
But I think when I see like the best notes that work the best for teachers, it's like teachers who work in a field that's not changing. So if it's like a science teacher and they've been there for 10 years and they've perfected about what they want to talk about, right? Because then you can pump out really succinct notes that work really well. But if you're in a class where the curriculum is constantly changing and you have to reinvent your thing, that's a tough thing to ask. And especially as you talk about, if we're asking that teacher to do one more thing on top of change their curriculum every single year, that's a lot. So it's nice that we can get the teacher buy-in and help them understand how this not will just help students, who have IEPs, but this is a universal thing, right? If we can show, because ultimately it should be about students learning. And if we're giving them real succinct notes and saying, hey, this is what you need to learn to pass the test, great, because that's the important parts, hopefully, of that topic.
Yeah. And that again, they don't want to have to do every lesson twice, right? So the more that we can make it to where, hey, you only have to do it once and everybody benefits, but these ones have what they need. That's what I'm thinking about. All right. Any other thoughts on notes? Keep going. Okay. UDL, Universal Design, that goes right into that. What UDL programs are you using in your district? What are the programs that everybody's on? Or the devices that everybody has? Everybody has a Chromebook, or how are we teaching everybody the accessibility features of the Chromebook? How are we making, if we're utilizing them so amazingly, what are you guys doing to let everybody know? Any thoughts on that? It's hard. It's hard. Universal design is hard because it's expensive and it's hard to get everybody on the same page sometimes. There's a hand. Oh, Kimberly Crump.
In my little world of being a speech therapist, I decided this year in my junior high to take my kids that are working on language things and incorporate Google Read and Write, which is what we use in our district. So they bring their Chromebooks, they open them up. I have an assignment to do. And instead of like doing it with paper and pencil or highlighters, whatever, we use Google Read and Write. And so far it's working really well to kind of kill two birds with one stone. We're doing their IEP goals, but we're doing it on Google with Google Read and Write. And the fun story was that one of my students, he just loves it. And so he uses it in like the resource classroom or whatever. And one of his friends was like, dude, what is that? What are you doing? He's like, oh, I love it. Like, you should go tell that lady in that room that you want it, like the full system or whatever. And so he like pops in. He's like, hey, like my friend uses this. Can I get it too? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So, but yeah, just I'm having good success doing this for the first time. Like I always knew it was important, but I didn't know how to do it at the same time that we do speech therapy. So I'm really trying it out this year, and it's being pretty good, pretty successful. So the kids are learning. I just quizzed them today on some of the icons and what they do, and they're remembering it. And so I think that's a win.
Well, I know we all laugh about that. That sounds really silly, but I mean, that can become infectious, right? Like someone sees it, they sell it to another student. And I mean, that's really what we're trying to do, is get them to sell it to their friends. Because we're never going to sell cool students.
No.
But their peers possibly can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I'll give Eric props on that. I'll give Eric props on that. I know years ago, he did a great job in doing that exact same thing. And Eric, you could, of course, explain it better, but he had, I think, somebody in the classroom that was like the person that everyone went to and tried to sell it on to other students.
Eric, did you have a plant you were working with? Like a magician?
Yeah, in each class, I think is what he
was. What was the magic bride?
Eric, I need to know more.
Candy bar?
I might need to know more as well. I'm not placing quite.
Maybe it wasn't you. I swear it was though, because you implemented all of your Microsoft UDL stuff so well. You can't sell it to all the kids like you guys are saying. So if you had somebody in that class that was like the go-to person
cool, yeah.
for, hey, this is cool, you should try this. Maybe it wasn't you. Maybe I just dreamed it that it was cool.
I will say the longer the tools have been more UDL focused, right? So there's multiple means of engagement, multiple means of internalizing that information and those kinds of things, then the more teachers are likely to pick those up. I think our district is doing a much better job as well as pushing at UDL from the teaching and learning department. Because really UDL isn't just, the assistive technology or the special ed, it's an everybody thing, right? And the longer those tools stick around, so I know for years, all of us were like switching between tools, like, oh, we just got Chromebooks, or we just got this, or we just got that. But the better those tools get, the easier it gets to implement over time, for sure.
And now that I think about it, it was Brady that was telling me you guys were doing it that way, that they had the plant in the classroom, trying to sell it to the other kids.
By the way, Eric, next time someone asks you and says you're the cool person implementing cool, just take it, man.
Yeah,
I'm saying you don't know what they're talking about. Just take
Make
it.
up the best story.
It was Brady, yeah.
Now Brady's the cool one.
I think in some of the districts that do have, what I think not in just the districts with Chromebooks, whatever you're using, because like Eric's using Microsoft and they have all those inclusive readers, and he's figured that out. Figuring out with the devices you have what the accessibility features are, and then thinking, okay, how can we, can I get into an in-service? How can I get this information out to everybody so that we can start just getting the accessibility features? We use them all the time. Julie and I were talking about this the other day, like how many of us use different accessibility features on our phone, like to make the text bigger because we like it, or to make the text different colors because we like it that way. And so just knowing, I think half of the battle in accessibility is knowing what's available to us, whatever that is for our different situations, and then figuring out, okay, how can I sell this to everybody so that we're using it to the best of its ability. So whether that is the inclusive reader, whether that is just the accessibility features, the thing that we see with Apple, with Chromebook, with all of these companies is that they're just doing it more and more. These things are being built in. And so the best thing we can be doing is just kind of staying up on that, even if that is just like something as silly as watching like the Apple keynote that they give when they're going to release their new iOS, so that I know what Apple's going to be putting in, so I just know what they're doing, just keeping on top of all those things, because the tech, the AI, all these things are going to just keep changing. So if we know them, we can be giving that information to people. But what about thoughts on, so that's a lot of the reading and writing. Does anybody have thoughts on, you talked about communication in the other AAC. Jen Ramos, you want to talk about your UDL in preschool? She might not. But anyway, in our district, one thing that we've been trying to do is that idea of, hey, instead of putting in 15, my whole class of 15 kids for an eval, can I get GoTalk or Proloquo on my iPad and be doing more of my lessons in this way? So, because again, not every kid needs that to communicate, but it can be good context. Like if I'm doing a story and I give everybody a context board, the kids who, Jen raised their hands, I'll get you. Yeah, I'll have you tell more about your stories. Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, sorry. I was in a place that I couldn't turn my microphone on.
You're good.
No, I just find it easier in our preschool classroom because we have some kids with dedicated iPads that haven't quite learned to carry it around with themselves. It was so much trying to keep their iPad with them that we've done it where we're like, for our stories, we have a context board so that I can check understanding on, and we'll print them out. We'll take the Proloquo board that we'll program onto the iPad, screenshot it, and we'll hand out a paper version to everybody. And some will use their devices that have them. And we kind of do it as a whole class so that I can check for understanding as everybody's touching their pictures, but then have the other ones use a voice output. But we use it throughout everything, whether it's paper or the iPad, just more of a universal design. So everybody's getting used to using it. And my ones that can talk, it's helped with extending those utterances and as well as the nonverbal ones.
Yeah.
A big cell.
That's great. Thanks, Jen.
A big cell that I've had for the core boards is just that the core boards are the sideboards.
Yeah.
This is where we should be. And so when we have our core boards everywhere and the kids are pulling them off the pictures or whatever, they're starting to recognize the
Yeah.
in.
It helps with the reading.
And it helps
too.
with all of them.
Mhm.
And that little bit of buy-in, I think, is the teachers are like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, then this would work for everybody.
The things that we're doing and the things that I think we can point out to teachers are like, hey, everybody needs language help in here, right? Everybody needs help with their language. If we're giving them context and this kid's working on answering questions because they are more verbal and this one's working on, making a sentence, like we can still work on both of those goals with this one item. And so the more that we can be showing like, hey, this works on all of these different things, it's just a different way of thinking about it. As we're presenting that helps with those kids, again, that really need it, getting it, but also it helps everybody.
I think if you get one teacher that really takes it on.
Yeah.
And I have one teacher that she just had this, light bulb on. She's like, wait a minute. Our GBCs, our guaranteed Bible curriculum are these things. This is what all of our kids in preschool should be learning. So what are your lessons and how do you incorporate the device into your lessons?
Yeah.
And she actually this summer taught a class then to she's a life skills teacher, but so for our life skills and whatnot. And we made packets of the bingo cards for all of we have, lists of what are 3-year-old nouns and what are 5-year-old nouns and verbs. And we made bingo cards for those and then demonstrated how we would use that with the device. And the thinking was, if you can get kids to express it, you don't need to work on the receptive. So every time she picks something up, if her goal is matching, she'll just say, what is it? And they have a board to choose from and they say it. So we've had a lot of success with maybe turning those thoughts around about our motto now is, if you want to know something, ask a question. And if you ask a question, make sure that your student has a way to answer. So how are you going to make it so that they can answer? Whatever it is, you have to make it so that they can.
Yeah, so that they can give you something. That's great. And I think with that, like you're in preschool, gender emphasis in preschool, I get a lot of, but every other kid wants to play with their device, so we can't have their device out because this kid wants to play with it or this kid wants to ruin it. And if we're doing more of that, normalizing and hey, we're just giving that to everybody, then that's not an excuse. And if I'm in my teaching, every kid gets to touch it, then it's a non-issue because this kid, and that goes back to having the kid who thinks it's really cool and you get all the buy-in from all the kids. If everybody's doing it, then that reduces the behaviors of your other kids. And that helps. It just helps everybody.
This teacher actually has 4 iPads just that are hers for her classroom to have, and
which is fantastic. And
so
getting it on your classroom devices. And another great thing with that is then getting that device to your paraeducators, so your paraeducators are learning it and they feel more comfortable. So I have a lot of my teachers where I'm like, one night a week you should have assigned where you get to take it home. And you just get to play with it.
Well, she makes them now that she now has to have communication goals in the IEP. So now her paras have to keep data.
Yep.
So they can't say, I'm not going to use that, or I don't know that, or whatever. They have to use it because she says, I need your data. I need you to sit down and take data on this.
Yeah. So that universal design, getting your staff on board, it's beneficial for everybody. But okay, so that all in mind, how are we letting people know that? What's been successful for you guys with getting that information to your teachers and getting that buy-in?
Yeah. So, sorry, I stepped out for a little bit.
You're great.
I am not too off track.
Oh, you're great.
Like I said, we have a lot of kids using Polo Go.
Yeah.
And now they're at first, because it was a few years ago, we were just starting using devices and now they're coming and they're very successful. So we've done trainings and faculty meetings, but we have a 2nd grade class that there are 3 students in that classroom who they don't necessarily need their device all the time to communicate, but it is for communication breakdown and repair.
Great.
And if they're put on the spot, like for one little kiddo, he doesn't even initiate or request with his own family. So if you think he's gonna initiate and request with you, good luck, you know?
Yeah.
And we've done lessons in this second grade class and it has become, it's very normalized. They have the post the Colico home board in their class. We've taken what Carrie's done at the preschool, doing a word of the week. We do every 2 weeks. And there's posters all around the school. And it helps our kids to see that their device and their system is around the school. And I have fourth and fifth graders who don't need a device at all, but they're like, hey, my brother uses that, or they're asking questions, what's that for? And I'm like, oh, well, we have some students that use an app and they're sitting there trying to make sentences using the posters that they see around the school. And it's been a good discussion and good relationship building, especially in the class. We'll go in and just read a book that they're already reading. So we're not planning something different than what they're already doing for the day. And the kids really enjoy seeing that you can write those things on the device. They now understand it takes a lot longer to do it on there than if I just say it. So just kind of some comparing things that way.
That's great.
But yeah, training that was Janine's idea.
Yeah.
But faculty
Right.
meeting training, because we're to the point now, these kids are not just using it in their life skills class. Because they're coming from Carrie's preschool, I have a kid that does not go anywhere without his device. He is glued to him, like always. Even if he's gonna run, he's an eloper. Even if he's gonna run, he's an eloper.
Fantastic. That's horrible.
He will. I'm not kidding. I knew it was working.
It's out, he'll be able to tell people.
Yeah, right? I got it. So I went to the print shop to order more core boards, right?
Nice.
And finally, the print shop guy is like, what is this? Like, all these people are ordering this in different sizes, in different, like, what is this? And I'm like, oh, that's good. That means it's bigger than me.
Yeah, it's building that awareness, making that environment picture rich, putting those things that they're gonna see around. That's great. Because then they're asking those questions, and then maybe we have parents who have a little kid who should be in preschool who's not yet. Like, oh, maybe I should be getting, it's building that
parents.
idea.
It's parents that really do make things happen too. And if the parent sees the value in what you're doing, and I think that like the email group that I send it to, the parents started to see the value. They started to go, oh, this really helped my child. And they're the ones who figure out a fundraiser, who figure out, they're amazing. And so the more you can get that, they will push an IEP more than anybody.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, thinking about all of the areas, in what ways can UDL and AT be used together to support inclusive classrooms? We kind of talked through some of those things already. And I think we have really great ideas for the communication, especially in the special classrooms. I feel like that's communication in the special classroom. There are really good ideas for universal design, but what about our kids who are device users in a gen ed classroom? Anybody had anything interesting with that?
Well, 3 years ago, kindergarten just lost their mind when I sent all my kids to kindergarten with devices. Like, no, they've been doing it for 2 years now, and we're like moving on, and it was really hard.
Yeah.
But I have kids that are completely nonverbal, and one of my little guys just wrote a whole paragraph. He's not yet 5, wrote a whole paragraph about a narwhal. Right on his device, and then read it out. And so really his SLP and his teacher, when we had the transition meeting to kindergarten, was like, he really needs to be in gen ed.
Yeah.
He really, really needs to be in gen ed. And whatever we need to do to support him and his device, this is where he needs to be. And we can push that, but we're also trying to say to the teacher, okay, what do you need? Then?
Yeah.
What do you need? And I find that's the strategy best. I'll go into the classroom and just say, gosh, I really need so-and-so to use their, what are they doing with their device in the classroom? How can I help you? And that usually gets them kind of, instead of you need to do this.
Yeah, I agree with that. With our couple, just making ourselves available. Like, hey, we're not just a special ed thing. Like, you're genetic, you're gonna get it, and this is a whole new thing. But like, hey, let's talk about it a little bit beforehand, so it's less scary, and then know that we're here. And it's been pretty successful for them. But what about the other kids? And what about, because I do know, like with some of mine, they're like, oh, they don't want to get it out because again, those kids are cognitively high enough that they do realize it's making them different. Any thoughts on that?
I put iPads in the gen ed classrooms as well.
Yeah.
And then we gave them, lesson plans, or adapted their lesson plan to use the iPad, and just encourage them with their classroom iPads to have it around, so that when somebody has one, our kids go, oh no, that's so-and-so's. I went into a classroom and I went to pick up a kid's iPad and I said, I need to work with it. He gave it, and the other kid was like, you can't touch that. That is his voice,
That's awesome. One thing I proposed, I gave a teacher a modeling iPad, and again, these kids are cognitively higher, they're socially aware. The idea was that kids could earn a time to be taught how to use it by that kid. So like this kid, you can have your iPad, they can have one, you guys can have a conversation together. They're going to show you how their talking works, and then the different kids can be earning that. That's so that it becomes like a super cool. I want to be able to talk with this kid today. I want to work really hard. Yeah, exactly. It's a prize. Like things that we can do to make it, again, the kids be like, wait, I want that.
Yeah, you just have one thought that so not all classrooms have like peer tutors or like gen ed peers who come in and work with the students. Yeah, with special education, but some classrooms are set up that way, and it would be great time when the peer tutors or the peer friends, what are they called, peer buddies?
Yeah.
Whenever they're there, that's when you train on using it. You train them both, and you say you can both use this, and then they can take it back to the gen ed classroom too, and hopefully share it. And then the specialist student and the gen ed student have something in common, and they can feel comfortable using it together. Maybe it would spread it also.
Yeah, and they'd be like, oh, I used this cool thing with this kid in here. Yeah.
Or we're doing the word of the week time with the peers in there.
Yeah. Those are all great ideas. Any other ideas? The last question on there, do we see people not using devices that would be helpful for them due to social situations, and what are we doing to help with this? I think we've discussed that and see that we do. And so those are some of those things, how can we make it socially motivating? How can we make it? And I think that the answer sometimes with the reading and writing, the note taking, is sometimes we have to let them make that choice. And I feel like when we're letting them make that choice, that doesn't mean we don't keep, pointing out that that's good. Sorry, go ahead.
As far as the reading goes, I think AirPods are like the greatest invention ever. Because a kid can hide an AirPod. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a store and I've been talking to the person who works there and they can't hear me because they've got their AirPods in their ear. Like, you can't do anything.
Yep.
And so if we can link an AirPod with whatever device they're using, then they can sit there and look like they're reading
and be listening,
but and feel less conspicuous.
Absolutely. And I think just even if they're making that choice of not using it, having it in the environment, the more that we keep talking about it positively, the more we keep trying to, maybe I have a kid, I just actually did this with one of our post-high where the teacher's like, well, this kid isn't motivated to do it. And I'm like, but you have this kid who's using it amazing. So have you put them in the same reading group so that this kid is seeing like, oh, that kid's using that super amazing and they're not bugged by it. I should do it too. Like, can we move our kids around? Can we put them in different classes where it might be more motivating? Just getting creative with those ideas. I think we're good.
Cool.
Supporting transitions. Okay, how are your teams tracking transitions, whether that be transitions from preschool, from school to school, how as they're getting ready to transition into the workforce, what are you doing to keep track of these type of things? That could be like the kids that are on your caseload, the devices that they are using, where they're going.
Carrie's insane at tracking that. So
I lose the kids though, like I transition them to kindergarten and I'm often wonder which ones.
well, you know
Make
how all
it.
of them are with me because I tell you.
I know, and so that's what I was gonna say, is knowing the staff that's going to receive the child will give me, I mean, Mr. G is in what grade now? And I had an early intervention and then in preschool and he's fifth grade now. So if I know the people who are getting them, then I can do that. But I've often thought we should have some sort of a data, how many kids grow out of them, how many used them, how many, it's just a big thing.
My current thought has been, I've been starting to work on a Google Doc, but we hadn't had a good system of this either. And so I'll go into a class and be like, meet a kid that was evaluated in 2016 before I worked at the district. So I wasn't aware of them. Now I know a lot more that have been evaluated since I've been there. But anyway, just an idea of like, hey, let's have a list that runs of all of the kids who we've evaluated, just so that we all are being more effective in our following up. And I think that will include also like, oh, parents bought them a device, like just knowing, because sometimes I'll get like, oh, their iPad's broken and their parents want you guys to fix it, and I'm like, I didn't even know that could exist, but yes, we'll fix it. Let me come see what they have. Like just knowing that is sometimes helpful.
One thing that all of ours is in a Google Drive, and Angela has set a folder for every kid, and it's got a hyperlink into where the devices are. So it's pretty amazing. So we can go back and see the evaluations.
And if we ever do a follow-up, we just always go into that document and write a little note. So if they were evaluated in preschool and they're now in 5th grade, we usually see if anyone on the team has gone in and had any contact with them, we have a note on it.
Cool. So seeing a couple of Google. I think Eric and Robert may have some other things to chime in if you guys want to at any point. But a follow-up question to that is, how often are teams doing follow-ups? Like, I know we've done pretty good about following up within the same year that we evaluate a student, but from year to year, how often are we following up or reevaluating? Robert?
This is going back to the transition thing, not the follow-up necessarily, but the one that kind of threw me off that I hadn't thought about in transitioning is like Nebo, we have the 150 seats of co-writer and Snap and Read, right? And it surprised me how many kids will use like Snap and Read so much one year and then transition from like 8th grade to 9th grade and not realize that they still had access to it and their teachers never know. So because there's not a physical device, sometimes the transition gets missed because it's just an extension, on their Chromebook or something. So I didn't know if anyone else was caught off guard by that like I was, but that's something to be aware of.
Yeah, no, we noticed that too. And then also a thing that I noticed that was weird with Snap and Read and co-writer is if they use, so like if we have a kid who every class has a Chromebook, but they don't have a dedicated Chromebook, they have to go back in and re-sign in anytime that they do a device switch. So some of ours were just not knowing like, oh, I can sign back in and use it even if I move from class to class. And so we've had to include that as part of our training of like, so this is how you sign in if you were signed out because you got on at home and now you're trying to get back on at school, but now you're signed out. And so then after the summer, if they haven't used it all summer, it's that same kind of thing where they aren't using it. So every year you're kind of having to remind them. So we did start emailing all of the teachers at the beginning of the year. Hey, these are your kids that have access. Here's the video on what these things do. here's the video on how to get signed back in, just to give them that information. The thing that I ran into at that point was most of them didn't look at that email. So in a couple of months, I would still get emails of like, oh my goodness, this kid needs snap and read and co-writer. And I was like, I emailed you 2 months ago that they had it, but yeah, let me come get them signed in because they should have been using it for 2 months. So yeah.
That timing is tricky because if you jump in too early at the start of the year, AT's like not on most teachers' minds at all.
Yeah, you're correct. And that goes into like wanting to support the kids who transition with communication devices too, because you're like, let's get on board, let's get started with this. And they're like, I'm dying right now. Can you give me a second? So what do you think? What have you found a time that's the best time, Robert?
No, when you guys find the right time, let me know. I just know it's not the first couple weeks of school.
Yeah.
I don't know the right time, but one thing Angela and I did for one of my kiddos transitioning to a middle school is we reached out to the teacher and the speech pathologist to set up a time to meet with them, go over the device and the setup, make sure they had access to one in the classroom and as well as the one the student had, and just what their questions or concerns or their familiarity. I can't say that would be familiarity with it. I can't say it, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And meeting with them one-on-one, and we kind of put it on them, like when were they asked when they were available. It was later. It was probably September.
Yeah. Nice.
And then just
But
the beginning of
Good
the year,
idea.
and it kind of goes both ways because we have some that are like messaging us immediately saying, "Bring me this." Device, like
Yeah.
it's checked back
Yeah.
into us, and
Yeah.
we got to get it to
We're
them.
like we started this.
So,
we started yeah.
It's we kind of wait to hear from teachers, which I don't know that that's the best way, but then you know they're using it. So
Yeah.
I think that actually, and you know the kid has been successful with it in the past. If the teacher is like, hey, remember we have so and so, we need this keyboard or whatever the desktop equipment is.
With our UATT equipment, whatever we check out every year, we gather back in.
Okay.
Because before we were just losing it, and so now, like she said, so oftentimes teachers will be like, well, we need this back, we need this back,
Yeah.
and so we know that they're using it.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
So this is something that we're just trying out. I work at a preschool. And so what we noticed is our kids who've made like tons of progress once they get to the kindergarten, it's like starting over because they haven't seen the kids. So we're having the teachers actually that they're transitioning to come at the end of the year to observe the student in the classroom so that they have a very clear idea of what the student is capable of, what they can do with their devices, so that when they get the kid next year, they know
that.
what this kid can do. They've seen it.
That's fantastic. And then that makes it a less of a like, oh, I was reading through their IEP and what am I gonna do? Then they actually have a memory of like, oh yeah, I saw that kid. I know that they were doing that. That's great. Yeah.
We have a whole spreadsheet of all of the kids going to kindergarten, and then we all put input into kind of what people need to know, and then which kids actually need physical meetings.
Yes.
And then our psyche teacher sets up a physical meeting but speech pathologists try to go to all those meetings, but I think we could do a lot better.
Yeah, we didn't have 200 to go to.
Yeah, that's so many.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think with that idea of timing and with what Robert said, I think my biggest thought is it can't be a one-time thing is what I've noticed. Like I will meet with the teacher before because we need to kind of quiet those fears of like, especially like when you're getting one that's going to gym and they're like, what am I going to do? We need to calm that. And then we also need to keep going back and saying like, what is working? What do you need help with? And so figuring out, what's going to need a little bit more of our time and going a couple of times until they're comfortable, just so, because sometimes they don't know what they need, they're like, I don't know what my questions are. I don't know what I need. I don't know what the issues are. I need time. But also I do need to know that I'm supported. And so making sure that they know that we're there by being there at the beginning, but then also that it's not okay, I already talked to you, like you should be good with it. Like when those questions arise that we're still there, that we can still be helping them. Is I think helpful with that too, of making sure that our staff knows, hey, anytime I'm with you, it's not a one and done thing. It's I will be here anytime that you need me. I think that can help with that timing at least.
One thing that our preschool did this year that I really liked was preschool starts a little bit later, so they have some downtime while prep time, whatever. And they came in to the school and helped work with the child and showed them what they could do with the devices, and I did like that.
Some teachers were very receptive to that, and some teachers
We're not.
not.
Really?
Yeah, we
I
sent our
understood.
techs in. We sent the techs who were working with the kids, and they just went wherever the kid was. They didn't have an agenda. They just followed the child and then tried to help the adults, on how we could incorporate this. So I thought it was a great idea too.
I think part of this comes to just knowing our staff too. Like you'll know those teachers who are like, I'm gonna want you right now, and you'll know those ones it's like, I need to give you a minute. And so we start to learn those things, but that doesn't mean that we can't encourage, and mold that as well. I also think a concept from what you guys are saying and from my own things is we can't have our training and our support needs to be as individualized as our students. There's not just like, oh, I'm going to do this training with everybody and that's going to be the answer. Some are going to need us to come and show them. Some are going to need us to come and, hey, just watch me and give me points, And so that's something I've been thinking of incorporating into my own trainings is like even a beginning of the year. Hey, these are the trainings that we are offering. I want you to pick one, at least one, because I want to be in touch with all of you. You can pick more than one. It's not limited, but like what is most helpful for you? And getting that idea of not like, oh, this is what I think everybody needs, but hey, how can I help you so that we can increase that buy-in and increase that relationship? Because I think that helps us.
No, we were just talking about training and, getting that buy-in from other people. We have quite a few RETs in our district, or behavior techs, and it's kind of like the SLPs are on this side and they're on this side. They're like, well, they're verbal. They don't need that device anymore. I'm like, they say 2 words and they only say it because you say this.
Yeah.
Right.
When they say, go away.
Right. And I'm like, so Carrie and I did a training which we made mandatory for all of our behavior people.
Nice.
And since that training, we have had so much buy-in. In fact, we're planning on doing it again next year because we really it was a 8-hour-a-day training. It was a lot, but
a lot of people found it helpful. A lot of them signed up even for the word of the week email and things like that. So I think the more staff that we could say, how can we help you? And maybe even those teachers of like having the tech go in, we could probably, talk to the teacher and say, hey, I'd like to set up this and have a tech come in and help you. What do you think about that? Instead of just kind of sending.
Yeah. I think the idea of just, hey, let's give the people what they want and what they need is the best thing we can be doing. So back to the transition questions. What are we doing to facilitate people leaving school and having a device for the next part of their life, like our 18 to 22-year-olds? Any thoughts? And if anybody had thoughts online about what we just went past, you can also interrupt and say those things too. But any thoughts on our 18 to 22-year-olds? This has been something new for me. I hadn't had as much with this, but Austin and Julia have been great resources as far as like whenever I'm like, we need something, just like reaching out to them to know what is available has been helpful. But I know that the Slack is, just anything that we don't know, reaching out to our colleagues is a good idea. But other ideas? And knowing more about Voc Rehab, that's what I've been learning about. Apparently we're under the umbrella of Voc Rehab. That's something I learned this year. And knowing what Voc Rehab can do for us is a great thing.
Yeah, if people have a vocational goal or want to move towards employment long-term, vocational rotation, I would say, would be a pretty good option in that. We've actually done training. We probably actually need to make the rounds again to the offices about helping people in that transition, because unfortunately, too often people would come back to book rehab years later would say, well, you know, they did use a device in school, but they haven't used anything for several years. And so we're trying to help there be more understanding and knowledge of helping people transition from school with a device, especially if that's obviously their form of communication.
And encouraging students, families through the IEP, however you can, to sign up and look into book rehab services. If they don't know about it, it's key. It can be a key resource to have them transition out of high school. Yeah.
I think it's been different for me too, just thinking about like the part of their lives that we have these kids is such a small part compared to the rest of their life that we don't, and helping all of us realize that, and also helping families and staff realize like, hey, yeah, this kid may be doing really well at school, but what about with the people they don't know, or what about in these new situations? Like what are our goals? What is the end game in making sure they have what they need for that? Any other thoughts on that? There's another like follow-up question on 18 to 22-year-olds. What have we seen included in IEPs to support that transition for these older students?
I can just say from Angela and I have a private practice in our spare time outside of school.
All of our spare time.
And I have gotten several parents that will just reach out and they're like, I don't know, they have a device and I need them to use it and I don't know what to do. And now they've aged out of their ABA program and and they're just searching for that help to transition. And so I don't like it that they have to be searching out a private practice on their own. We should be doing something more to educate them and to help them through that, because those parents are desperate when they call.
Right. And I think that's really important is, that we do a better job as education and helping people and understanding that there are options and that it shouldn't be a reaction with three months left of school. Like, hey, what do we do to fix this?
Yeah.
Right? It should be a conversation that we're having years before people are getting the school system. And is that something that we're doing? And if not, how can we do that? And how can we make that part of our practice?
Any other thoughts on our older friends? Okay, last one then, is the needed AT following students as there's one more question that we had skipped. Is it following students to provide FAPE? Are we making sure that kids who have an iPad in elementary still have that iPad when they're in secondary, that it's still being implemented well? What are there things that you guys are using to keep track of that? We used to have like a communication continuity form that Jason Shelley had made, but then we moved to all digital files. And so how are we letting teachers know? Any ideas? I've relied mostly on just emailing, which takes a long time because we have a lot of kids, but it is important. And so if there is like better ways that we can be making sure, I know writing it in the IEP is great too, but sometimes it's nice for them to know before they're just like, oh, let me look through these goals. Oh, wait, what? How am I going to get this? I've never done this before. Like having it not be a surprise, I think helps with them using it better, Any thoughts?
Got it all figured out.
Okay,
Right.
we're great.
All solved.
Everybody has faith. We can celebrate. All right. Next slide then, wrapping up AI. I think it's what it said. Yeah. Okay. AI. We're to this point. The questions for AI are: have you used AI since our recent trainings? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it?
Trainings have come from my kids in high school and college. I'm like, I didn't know all this could be
is going on? And
All right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Robert.
This is not personal experience. It's just something I heard at USAT yesterday, but there was a university professor who did a research project where he had all of his students turn in a paper that he specifically asked them to have AI write it. And then he graded it like it was just student work. And the average grade was a B-. And then he had them take the same paper and say, okay, now make it your own. He said he got the best papers he's ever seen. So I thought that was really interesting.
So that idea of get those initial ideas from AI and then make it great. That's cool.
So what are some ways we can use AI potentially in moving forward in instruction? Again, AI is here, it's here to stay. How can we use it to help improve how we're teaching, how we're interacting with students, how they're interacting with the world? Any ideas, thoughts?
Babette?
You said I took a class on Canva and how they are using AI, and they were having kids create books using Canva, but they were using the AI to help them design the book and to figure out how to write it and to plot it out. And it was amazing what they were. I mean, he literally wrote it with us sitting there and created the whole thing with the whole book front, the whole everything. And it was, and you could have
Canva has AI.
Canva it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. There are cool things. I liked you said too that, like I said, he talked about what we need to be doing is changing how we're teaching, and because AI is not going anywhere. Another cool thing that he said that you said the keynote is key I'm talking about. There's the big concern about AI and cheating and what are we gonna, it kind of goes into that same idea of, if I give the kids speech to text, I'm making them not write. If we're giving them these tools, we're crippling them. It was funny though, because he talked about there's been a study done and they were looking at the amount of cheating that was happening. And before AI, it was like 70% of students in high school cheated. And he was like, but the thing is that we didn't really care then. And then we've done studies since AI and that number hasn't changed. They're still cheating. So yeah, we can be talking to them about cheating, but also it can just be knowing like it hasn't really made a difference. So let's change how we're teaching. Let's change how we're using these tools.
The really powerful way I've seen it used is people are kind of use AI as almost someone to bounce your ideas off of, right? It can be that confidant for someone who might be extremely an introverted individual, may not want to do that group work, but gives them another framework of context, to be able to see it outside of their own thought process. So a really powerful option, being able to have a second opinion from an AI bot,
Yeah. Tell me how I can I wrote this paragraph. Tell me how I can make it better. Like
I found it's a really, really good brainstorming tool. It's you only know what you know, and you only know the tools that you know. And so when you say, hey, I've got this much, add something else to it, bring more, give me the start to this. It's a good opportunity to add something you don't know. And then you can always, most of the AI tools provide you, will give you the links to where they pull the information from it. So you can go and continue the search and continue that learning and deepen that learning that way. I think it's a really good start.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of like with music, how they talk about sampling, right? Like you hear a style of music or you hear something, then you extrapolate from that and you make your own unique things, right? The same thing. You're going to get that start, that intro, and then you're going, oh, okay, yeah, that's a unique way to look at it. How can I run with this?
Yeah.
I think there's a generational component coming from somebody who's been around a long time. And
you point at me when I've been around. I have no clue about my age. No worries.
Yeah, and I really appreciate graduate students, and I really appreciate the young people coming in, because I'm always just like, Nellie, help me. And I remember when I was a junior in college, I got a word processor, which was flipping awesome. And then when I was a senior in college, there was the personal computer. And my dad saying to me, that's total cheating. That is totally cheating. He said, I wrote my dissertation on a typewriter. I'm like, yes. Sorry, that's too bad, you know? And so I think if you don't understand what it does for you, then you have a different perspective of whether it's cheating or not.
Yeah.
You can just say, oh, that's cheating.
Yeah.
If you don't really understand what it does. I mean, obviously I typed that into the computer.
Yeah, and that you bring up a good point that we always think that next thing is cheating. It's just
right,
something that we've always thought. But another cool thing that I think with AI is like the same idea of, hey, how are we using speech to text to do like personal fun? Like, how are we making it to where it's not just work, but it's like cool things to your life? So like one day I wanted to try like HIIT workout because as you know, hearing all about it, so I told it, make me a HIIT workout, and then you can just, so you can do so many cool things with AI, just like with the speech to text speech, to make it a part of your life. And then we can also be using it for these things that we need it for.
Well, online we have some comments as well. Eric wrote on here that he's having it write AAC stories using core vocabulary for his literacy days. So really cool option. Kimberly on here, the same thing that was said about calculators back in the day. So,
And books.
and books and speech to text, speech and all that. I mean, new is always seen as cheating.
Will you
right?
always have a calculator? Well, I will.
And then Robert comments about brainstorming. So he said brainstorming. I worked with so many students who were struggling. The writing process was just coming up with that idea and getting started. Right?
Yes.
So absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, it sounds like we've all alluded and talked about using ChatGPT. Are there other cool AIs that?
Oh, we have Kimberly has her hand up.
Oh, cool.
Hey, two extreme examples. At the junior high that I'm at this year, the German teacher at Halloween time had the kids write a story in German about a monster that they were imagining, or a monster story. And he had them use AI to design the monster, what the monster looked like. And I thought that was really awesome because he made them describe what the monster should look like to AI or whatever, and AI printed out what their monster was going to look like. And I thought that was really cool to get the kids kind of have like a buy-in and just a really neat way to use AI. And then the other extreme was my son last semester at the U of U, taking this class, and the teacher, he was an older guy, but I don't know if he was so afraid of AI because this was just coming out, and I know the professors were all discussing cheating and everything. He just said, no laptops, no computers, no nothing allowed in my class. You'll be taking, paper notes, and he handed out blue books for tests. And I thought, how sad, because these kids have grown up with typing and computers and all of that. And then to say that you can't use that, I just thought that's just going backwards in my mind. You know what I mean? Like to withdraw all of that from a college class, that these kids had to, use pen and paper and write down their essay for the blue book. Anyways, I just thought those are two just like really extreme examples of being
No,
afraid of
Kimberly,
AI.
I did hear someone who was talking about that would be a way of preventing cheating, right? With making everyone handwrite things. But how well does that work for accessibility, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't, obviously. So not a great option, but still something that people are putting out there. Eric, it looks like there's a question online as far as what kind of prompts are you using on AI to do those AAC stories? You want to talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. So I just went into Copilot right now and I said, write me a funny 300-page story using the core vocabulary concepts of stop, go, up, and down. And I told it to make it funny. And here we go. Ready?
I'm ready.
The title is The Great Balloon Adventure. Once upon a time in the bustling town of Wordville lived a curious student named Alex. Alex had a special way of communicating through a magical device that helped him express their thoughts and feelings. This device was like a treasure chest of words waiting to be unlocked. And then it goes on for the next, 200 and 90 words.
Yeah, keep going.
But really,
Right.
really, if you just say, you know, and you can even add in, write it at, you know, this Lexile level, write it at this grade level, and those kinds of things. So you can differentiate it just with your prompts on what you want it to be about. So you can give it the topic and have it be about that topic. You can have it be about those core words. You can add in a prompt to say, okay, now go rewrite the story, but emphasize how the student uses AAC, right? How they use it in the story, right? And you can go back and have it rewrite and re-edit the story for you as you, again, as you draft and as you figure out how to make it be the story you want. And then you can always, of course, take that and just change it how you want, right?
I like it.
Carry your brain like.
I saw somebody talking about this. He was a lawyer, and he was just saying, you know, I don't think AI is ever going to replace professions like lawyers or things like that. But the thing is, lawyers or teachers or people who can effectively use AI may replace those who can't. You know, these are going to be things that we're going to be working with. And that same idea goes to our kids too. They're going to need to know how to work these things to be successful in a future world. And so how can we be teaching them how to utilize those things? Call that.
Our district is using school AI and doing a pilot with the company. And it has a space where the teacher puts the prompts or the activities up, and then all the kids work in it as a group, so that you're not worrying about them, their privacy and the problems that we've had with Google or whatever taking their information. And so that's a nice thing about that one.
And for those who didn't see, Eric maybe had the sweetest ending story ever. Remember, dear readers, the communication is like a hot air balloon. Sometimes it picks you up, sometimes it brings you down. Always an incredible journey. Are you becoming a children's novelist now, Eric?
I think we can all become better writers using AI. I think the amount of creativity that you can, you know, again, using it as that idea generator and modifier and all of those things, right? And you could even go back and say, okay, write this from the perspective of Stephen Hawking, or, you know, and you could find other AAC users or other famous people to have it be like from their perspective. There's so many ways to like modify it once you've started that you can really end up with some cool stuff.
Yeah, I know that was one of the things at that AI training that we did with Shelley Haven. She was talking about talking to the book characters, right? And getting their perspective of why their motivation and stuff in a book is a good avenue for a student to have an assignment on. So some really powerful stuff, I think.
Yeah, you could even teach, I was thinking you could even teach descriptive writing or descriptive language. Since I do I'm in SLP, like having them do a generative AI picture and see like, oh, our picture would be so much cooler if we added more words or more descriptions. You know, that can expand our writing, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, again, I think that's the real power, right? It's just another tool and another console. What I've always taken from this is, yes, there's going to be cheating, but we need to structure assignments in ways that the lessons can still be learned that we're trying to teach. And it's not just about spitting out a paper, right? Because papers have always been able to be cheated or copied or, you know, copyright-written stuff. So finding a way to truly test knowledge as opposed to just giving a task. Well,
mic drop.
Yeah. Anything else that people want to talk about before we wrap up? I'm not obviously a stickler to the minute, but anything else that we want to talk about over AI or anything else in general with this conversation? Or are people way done after 3 hours?
Anything to wrap up the end of your year?
Hey, I would like invite to Slack.
Okay.
So I could,
yeah, how does that work? You have to invite us.
I will, yeah, I'll go back through. I think you can just go and then once you sign up, I'll get the invitation. We'll send it back out.
Okay.
And should I send it to you and then you'll distribute it to your team?
That would be great.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for coming. And yeah, this is kind of the final presentation of this year. The next big thing is that we're planning right now is the conference, and that's going to be at the end of February, the 24th, 5th, and 6th, which is actually a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're just finalizing everything as far as with the location. So we'll send out information once that gets finalized. So thanks again for coming, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.